Azuma Shuri introduces himself, recalling the moment he woke up surrounded by 8 strangers, men and women who called themselves a mercenary group. A 20-year-old cook with dreams of his own, he had somehow been dropped into another world. The story shifts back to his life before that moment. Working in his family's small diner in a rural corner of Hiroshima Prefecture, plating a dish, and calling out an order to table 3. Even as a child, Shuri loved cooking. From the 3rd grade of elementary school, he began packing his own bento every morning, driven by the goal of one day taking over his father's diner after graduating high school. His father, the diner's stern head cook, sets the terms early to work in a kitchen. First learn to properly handle a knife and pots. The early attempts are rough. Failed dishes pile up, and he eats every one of them rather than waste the food. Encouraged by friends, he buys a cookbook and starts copying recipes, slowly turning failure into progress. By high school, he has taken over the family's daily cooking entirely, moving confidently between Japanese, Western, and Chinese dishes, even simple desserts. What began as duty has become something he genuinely enjoys. Determination builds year after year. Walking home from school, fists clenched, he repeats his one goal after graduation: work at his father's diner. His father has other plans. If Shuri is serious about running the place someday, he needs to master the fundamentals properly, starting immediately. The training that follows is relentless. Up at 5 each morning to prep ingredients, home at 10 at night to finish the dishes. No allowances, no special treatment as the owner's son. His father drills every technique into him personally. Just as Shuri expects to finally start at the family diner after graduation, his father delivers a different order: train outside instead. An old contact in Tokyo can arrange an apprenticeship, somewhere Shuri can learn things he never could at home. The decision has already been made. An apartment secured, paperwork filed, no room left to argue. His father sends him off to Tokyo without further discussion. At 18, Shuri begins his apprenticeship in the city, working long 6-day weeks from 5 in the morning to 10 at night, using his rare days off to sample dishes at Tokyo's best restaurants and sharpen his palate. The grind never feels heavy to him because cooking is what he loves. 2 years pass. His master eventually tells him there is nothing left to teach. Training complete, Shuri packs up to head home to Hiroshima, ready to finally take his place at his father's diner as he turns 20. The plan is simple: board the Shinkansen and return home. An ordinary trip like any other. Stepping onto the train, his foot slips, and he falls. The fall doesn't stop. His vision fades. The fall accelerates far beyond what should be possible, and he loses consciousness entirely, marking the end of his old life and the start of something new. He wakes disoriented, staring up at a stranger in heavy black armor with pale blonde hair, who tells him he is finally awake. The armored man explains Shuri was found alone in the camp of the group he commands, with no belongings and no memory of how he got there. Struggling to process any of it, Shuri hears the stranger name the place, the hilly region of Linbal. None of it makes sense to him yet. Confused and unsteady, Shuri repeats the unfamiliar name back, apologizing when nothing about it registers. The armored man explains it plainly. Linbal is the hilly region on the western part of the Subryu continent. Shuri only grows more baffled, unable to place a name he has never heard before. Others in the camp murmur among themselves, wondering if he is some kind of returnee who has lost his grip on the language. A pale-haired woman waves him further inside, and word spreads that the lost child has finally woken up. Stepping deeper into the camp, Shuri finds himself facing the full group at once. Armored fighters and sharp-eyed companions gathered together, sizing him up while he silently wonders if they mean him harm. His nerves spike further at the sight of them. Half convinced this must be some elaborate cosplay or idol group, rehearsing a play until his eyes land on a battle axe taller than he is, and the illusion cracks. This is no costume. Introductions follow. Shuri gives his name, and the blonde leader introduces himself as Gangrave, head of the mercenary group housing him. The word mercenary doesn't land right away. Shuri, still grasping for something familiar, wonders aloud if it is the name of some idol group instead, drawing confused looks from those around him. Sensing the miscommunication, Gangrave offers to explain everything from the start, while others quietly speculate that the boy might have hit his head. He recaps what happened. Shuri stumbled into their camp in a daze and collapsed on the spot, clearly disoriented, wandering, until his body simply gave out. Shuri admits he has no memory of arriving, only of suddenly being there. Gangrave presses further, asking where he came from originally. Shuri answers without hesitation: Japan. The name means nothing to anyone present, and Gangrave asks where exactly that is supposed to be. A companion wonders if it might be an island nation somewhere beyond the continent. Shuri confirms that Japan is indeed an island country, but the answer only deepens everyone's confusion, since no such place is known to them. Gangrave explains where they actually stand, the Rinbur Hills nowhere close to Japan, and suggests it is pointless to keep untangling the geography. Shuri spirals internally, since the Sabrilu continent has no place in Japan at all. Noticing him straining, Gangrave gently tells him not to push himself, reminding him he arrived caked in mud and completely worn out. Gangrave restates who they are, a mercenary group, while another member casually mentions that they cleaned him up while he was unconscious. Then comes the heavier truth. The group is currently in the middle of a war, and Gangrave hopes Shuri understands the weight of that. One of the sharper-eyed members points out the real issue. To them, Shuri is a complete unknown, and keeping an unidentified person around during wartime isn't something they can take lightly. The implication lands hard. If what they're saying is true, Shuri realizes he might be mistaken for a spy, and panic creeps in as the weapons around him suddenly feel a lot less distant. Gangrave clarifies they have no intention of harming him recklessly, especially if he genuinely is just a confused local or nearby villager, but doing so would risk turning the surrounding villages against them. To settle it, Gangrave lays out the terms. He doesn't truly believe Shuri is a spy, but for everyone's safety, Shuri must answer every question honestly. Shuri agrees, and Gangrave adds that if his answers check out, he'll consider sending him home safely. Bracing himself, Shuri swears he won't lie to them, wondering silently how his life ended up here. He restates the basics, his name, his age, and his home, in a rural part of Hiroshima Prefecture, just as he'd already told them. Gangrave cuts him off, pointing out he barely looks like an adult, let alone 20. Shuri protests that is simply his face. But Gangrave pushes further, insisting no such place as Hiroshima Prefecture, let alone Japan, has ever existed to his knowledge. He accuses Shuri of lying outright. Shuri holds his ground, repeating that he truly did come from Hiroshima Prefecture in Japan, and that he genuinely doesn't understand why he ended up here either. It isn't a lie, he insists. Gangrave presses for clarity, asking if Shuri means he is some kind of foreigner, an outsider from beyond their lands. The rest of the group watches silently, waiting on the answer. The women nearby murmur that it is simply impossible to expect them to understand something like this. Even Shuri, the one it is happening to, can't explain it properly. It makes a strange kind of sense that way. Shuri keeps insisting he is telling the truth, growing more desperate with each repetition, while Gangrave finally waves it off and offers to lay out the real truth of the situation. Instead, sensing his fear, Gangrave reassures him it was only an empty threat, and that he has no intention of hurting him. The conversation shifts to what happens next. Gangrave admits plainly that they don't have the luxury of supporting someone who brings them nothing useful, especially with his memory confusion showing no sign of improving. Gangrave offers a way forward. Even simple odd jobs would be enough to justify keeping him around. Shuri hesitantly asks if he could actually work for them. The group weighs the alternative, sending him instead to a nearby village for protection. Though with the war ongoing, no one is confident such a place could take him in. At most, Gangrave offers to send him off with some food and supplies, if that is what he'd rather do. Struck by how serious Shuri looks at the mention of leaving, Gangrave asks if they're really at war after all. Shuri reasons it through under his breath. If a war is truly underway, no village would have room to spare for a stranger, meaning leaving might actually cost him any real protection at all. Gangrave suggests it might still be safer to seek shelter with ordinary people. Shuri answers instead that he knows at least a little about what he himself can offer.
He pushes his case further, admitting he has nowhere else to go if he leaves, promising he'll do anything asked of him, all but begging to be allowed to stay. Gangrave relents, allowing him to stay and work, though strictly under supervision. He notes, somewhat surprised, how calm Shuri seems given everything happening around him. The group members eye him over, quietly doubting what use he could possibly be. Shuri, meanwhile, is already working through exactly what he needs to do to make himself valuable. One of the mercenaries, armored and scarred from battle, declares plainly he isn't leaving these people behind, since distancing himself now could easily mean getting caught in the fighting and killed. Shuri reaches the same conclusion for himself. He has no real choice but to earn a role here and survive, since walking away from a group with this much strength would be a fatal mistake. Struggling to think clearly, he wonders what he would normally do in a situation like this, his thoughts refusing to line up into anything useful. The answer finally comes to him. Straightening up, Shuri declares simply that he just wants to cook, catching everyone off guard. Gangrave asks him to repeat himself, certain he misheard, and Shuri confirms it plainly, he wants to cook. Pressed on whether he actually has the skill, Shuri admits he has trained a fair amount for it. Gangrave erupts into an enthusiastic fist pump, leaving Shuri quietly unsettled by the reaction. The rest of the group grows visibly excited too, puzzling Shuri as to why. Gangrave declares him the new cook on the spot, and says he has a job in mind to entrust to him. Rather than explain, Gangrave decides it is faster to simply show him and leads the way. Shuri hesitates, pointing out that suddenly taking over as cook might upset whoever currently handles the job, though he agrees to go along. Walking through the camp for the first time, Shuri takes in the full scale of it. Tents, supplies, soldiers playing cards, horses being tended. It truly looks like a battlefield encampment. Exactly what a mercenary group's camp should be. Passing merchants, carts, and people with strikingly colorful hair. The reality of his situation settles further. He really might have ended up in another world entirely. Gangrave brings him to a simple open-air setup, pots hanging over fire pits, and explains that the group fundamentally has no designated cook at all. He admits that every attempt to hire one has failed. No chef has ever been willing to come out to an active battlefield, calling it his own oversight. Shuri, surprised, asks if that means the group has been without a cook this whole time. Shuri quietly reasons that relying on this group is his only real option for now, since he has no other course of action available to him. Gangrave adds that working in a town, tavern, or dining hall would ordinarily be far safer. The women admit, outright, that what they've been managing to cook is barely edible, since the responsibility has simply been rotated among whoever's available. Many in the group have never cooked a single dish in their lives. With morale flagging, they'd hoped for a proper meal, especially with a battle looming. Gangrave lays out the real test. If Shuri can make something good enough to earn the word delicious from him personally, he'll be hired as the group's official cook. Shuri accepts without hesitation, eager to know what ingredients he has to work with. The pantry turns out to be modest: milk, cheese, salt, pepper, onions, carrots, potatoes, flour, and butter, along with a single knife, a pot, and a ladle. Gangrave explains the stakes further. The war began 3 months ago. Food supplies have run critically low, and they intend to settle this particular battle by tomorrow. Worse, today's assigned cook already declared the task impossible and gave up entirely, despite the men wanting something in their stomachs before the coming fight. Gangrave frames it clearly. This is the real test of whether Shuri can become their cook, working only with what is on hand, and he is counting on him to deliver. Alone for a moment, Shuri reflects on the weight of what has just been placed in his hands, a genuinely significant responsibility. Gangrave asks what dish he plans to make, revealing that all the bread and preserved food has already been consumed, leaving nothing else in reserve. Shuri lands on an answer: cream stew. Gangrave has never heard of it, and Shuri catches himself, wondering if maybe he means Mr. Gungrave instead. It strikes him as odd that something as basic as stew, especially cream stew, is completely unknown here. He notes quietly how strange it is that they can even understand one another at all, given everything else about this world. Trying to describe it, he settles on calling it a kind of soup or stew made with milk. Gangrave takes it in, uncertain but willing to accept the explanation. Examining the ingredients further only deepens Shuri's confusion. The names match exactly what he already knows. Despite everyone here clearly being a different race entirely, every word and meaning simply lines up. Setting the questions aside, Shuri decides judgment can wait until after it is made. He picks up the knife, noting the tools are shaped slightly differently than he is used to, but usable all the same, and announces he'll begin. Without consomme, fey, or soy sauce on hand, he adjusts his approach, planning a cream stew built entirely around what is available. He compensates by leaning harder on onions for flavor, cutting the vegetables into even 1 centimeter cubes to ensure they cook evenly. Melting butter into the pot, he sautés the onions first, explaining that cooking time shifts depending on each vegetable's type and size. Gangrave watches, curious about the order of ingredients. Shuri explains that hardness, texture, moisture, and flavor all differ vegetable to vegetable, so the sequence matters for the flavors to meld properly. Once everything is sautéed through, he pulls the pot from the heat and gradually stirs in the milk, then confirms it is fully cooked before adding flour to thicken it further. Gangrave frets over how pale the mixture looks, but Shuri assures him that is simply how cream stew is supposed to be. After seasoning with salt and pepper, he slices in cheese as the final touch. The finished stew is presented with a cheerful invitation to dig in. Gangrave balks at the sheer whiteness of it, unlike any soup he has ever seen, while Shuri quietly tells him to stop complaining. Samo nearby guesses it must be some sweet delicacy reserved for nobles, while Gangrave admits he simply doesn't understand the cream element at all. Urged to just taste it already, he finally takes a spoonful in front of the gathered crowd, and something shifts in his expression the moment it hits his tongue. The reaction ripples outward instantly, gasps spreading through the ranks as word travels that something remarkable just happened. Gangrave devours the rest without restraint, the whole camp turning to stare at the commotion he is making over a single bowl. Fully lost in the moment, he polishes off the bowl entirely, leaving the onlookers stunned by the sheer intensity of his reaction. Catching his breath, he simply asks for a refill. Shuri, startled but pleased, scrambles to oblige. One bystander admits the stew's unnatural whiteness had made them hesitant to even try it, unsure whether to call it soup or stew at all. Another points out that despite the color, there is no milky smell to it whatsoever. Yet the flavor of milk is unmistakably present throughout. Gangrave, thoroughly satisfied, asks for yet another bowl. Reminded that the whole point was supposed to be a test, he sheepishly admits he'd completely forgotten, apologizing for getting carried away. Gungrave devoured the dish without hesitation, calling it a remarkable success and congratulating Shuri for passing his test. Shuri watched with relief, grateful he finally served a proper meal. Gungrave praised the vegetables, saying they satisfied his hunger without any meat. Although disappointed by its absence at first, the delicious dish completely erased his complaints afterward. Gungrave paused mid-bite and asked Shuri what nutrients meant. Shuri explained meat alone was insufficient, while vegetables maintained balanced nutrition. A mercenary remarked Gungrave's ignorance suddenly made sense. Gungrave stared blankly, struggling to understand the unfamiliar explanation before him. Shuri raised one finger, explaining nutrients acted like fuel, keeping the human body strong, healthy, and functioning properly. News of Shuri's knowledge spread quickly across the camp, attracting curious whispers and stares. A woman asked whether he was a doctor, while Gungrave suddenly shouted, "Wait," leaving Shuri confused. Gungrave wondered whether Shuri was a food physician from some distant, unfamiliar country unknown to him. Shuri denied possessing medical skills, insisting he could treat neither illness nor injuries whatsoever. Samanon suddenly called Shuri's name, breaking the growing silence surrounding them. Gungrave formally invited him to join their group, announcing Shuri as their chef and encouraging everyone to eat well. The camp erupted into loud cheers immediately after Gungrave's announcement. He warmly shook Shuri's hand in welcome, while every mercenary followed, leaving the overwhelmed Shuri quietly acknowledging everyone.
Deep within the war-torn continent of Saburayu, a young man named Azuma, Shuri stood beside a tall armored stranger, confused about how he had arrived in this violent land. Armies clashed across open fields as knights shouted commands and charged forward, banners snapping in the wind while opposing forces collided in a chaotic storm of steel and desperation. Nations and warlords across Saburayu fought without end over territory, their soldiers locked in constant combat as greed and ambition pushed one kingdom against another with no peace in sight. Nobles and rulers schemed from their gilded thrones, each one eager to claim dominance over the fractured continent, treating the endless bloodshed as a mere stepping stone toward true power. Sorcery and steel intertwined on the battlefield, arrows and stones tearing through the smoke-filled sky while soldiers clashed each day beneath fire, adding to the mounting weight of destruction. Coins piled high inside merchant stalls, while bones lay scattered across nearby wastelands, showing how wealth and death had become constant companions in a world built on survival. Amid this chaos, mercenary work grew profitable, and one gang leader built his name through brute force, brawling in narrow alleys and claiming disputed streets with brutal efficiency. A young man's voice cut through the crowd, defending his companions without hesitation and introducing himself simply as Gungrave, a man once feared for his violent criminal past. Gungrave admitted that he once led a gang built on mischief and disorder, relying on a strange gift that guided his questionable choices during those reckless younger years. In a flashback duel, Gungrave disarmed a seasoned knight with ease, revealing swordsmanship far beyond his age, leaving onlookers stunned that a common delinquent could fight with such skill. Gungrave explained that his mind absorbed everything he witnessed at once, letting him master reading, writing, arithmetic, and worldly matters after observing each thing only a single time. As authorities tightened their grip on organized crime, Gungrave sensed his gang's criminal path had grown too dangerous, forcing him to reconsider what future awaited his loyal followers. Gathering 7 other talented companions, Gungrave left his old life behind and formed a mercenary group, confident their combined skills would carry them through Saburayu's brutal conflicts ahead. The group grew fast, eventually reaching nearly 100 members. Yet this sudden growth soon brought unexpected troubles that threatened to unravel their once smooth operation from within. Keeping such numbers running proved costly, demanding constant purchases of horse feed, food supplies, weapons, and armor, draining resources faster than Gungrave had expected when he formed the unit. Wages became another heavy burden, and Gungrave slowly understood that nothing about running a mercenary band came free, since every soldier's presence quietly drained their shared funds daily. Worse still, the group's assigned cooks served consistently poor meals, and the bad food quality began to weaken morale among the tired, hard-working mercenaries during every shared meal. Frustrated soldiers overspent in local taverns, pouring money into lavish feasts and drink, after enduring miserable rations on the battlefield, erasing whatever savings the group had slowly built. Because of this strain on funds, the mercenaries struggled to upgrade their weapons and armor properly, leaving the Dan Shikin group dangerously underprepared despite their growing battlefield reputation. Standing amid the bloodshed, Gungrave admitted he lacked both the funds and connections to hire a truly skilled cook, yet still hoped one might someday find his group. Despite constant hardship, Gungrave desperately wanted the mercenary group to survive, even though managing every member's needs felt like a burden heavy enough to make him quit entirely. For Gungrave, this path was never a simple means to survive. It carried a deeper purpose tied to something far greater than mere income or personal comfort. As a war orphan, Gungrave once wondered if evil deeds were required to change the world, questioning whether survival demanded cruelty from someone born into such circumstances. He envisioned taking wealth from those who hoarded it, using stolen riches to help common people instead, hoping this sad era of endless conflict would finally reach its end. Gungrave had killed countless enemies while fighting tirelessly across many battlefields, pursuing that distant goal, though defeat and humiliation had also shadowed him during several difficult campaigns. He refused to break despite constant struggle. Yet after 8 full years since founding his group, membership had stubbornly remained near 100, stirring quiet anxiety within him. Gungrave admitted experiencing deep despair during those years, feeling that his own abilities alone could not push the mercenary group any further toward real, lasting growth. Then fate intervened through an unexpected encounter, introducing Gungrave to a strange young man named Shoriazuma, someone who would soon completely reshape his destiny forever. At Gungrave Mercenary Corps' camp near Rinbell Hills, Gungrave wondered aloud what action his group should take next, admitting he had once misjudged this entire situation badly. 2 women discussed their shared frustration, noting how this conflict had turned into an exhausting war of attrition, with one admitting she had endured 3 straight months of fighting. Soldiers worried that continuing this losing battle threatened their mercenary group's survival, since financial losses were mounting fast and Haratsuka's open hills limited their available tactical options. Reports from subordinates revealed the enemy planned a full mobilization by morning, prompting immediate concern among the officers gathered together within their crowded encampment tent. Kaguya, serving as intelligence and security unit commander, argued that staying tied to this battle represented poor strategy, warning it would only produce unnecessary casualties without real benefit. She suggested retreating toward the next battlefield while their exhausted soldiers still retained some strength, rather than forcing already weary troops to keep fighting without proper rest. Altros, commander of the 2nd Infantry Battalion and the Punishment Unit, remained silent as always, prompting Gungrave to ask directly if something troubled his usually quiet comrade. Gungrave understood that Altros had long shown loyalty through actions rather than words, silently expressing conviction while others struggled to interpret his true feelings and intentions. Gungrave recognized that retreating now would dishonor fallen comrades, understanding that Altros endured harsh missions purely for the sake of those he fought alongside every single day. Aureus, captain of the Magic Division, warned that continuing this way would leave their mercenary group unable to sustain itself, urging everyone to reconsider their current approach. She insisted that pulling back now stemmed from genuine care for fallen comrades, questioning whether pride alone justified risking everyone's safety over unresolved grief and lingering guilt. Gungrave reminded her that as a free combat unit they retained full discretion over battlefield choices, though Aureus countered that pride should never be mistaken for recklessness. Gungrave acknowledged that Aureus raised a valid point, though she reminded him their employer wouldn't actually prevent them from choosing to leave this current battlefield entirely. Their commanders discussed how the Lord employing them would feel displeased, yet ultimately allow withdrawal since this particular battle had already dragged on for far too long. Despite these arguments, Gungrave suddenly objected, insisting he wanted to see this fight through completely and refused any thought of retreating from the battlefield now. He explained that failing to demonstrate strength here risked losing loyal comrades entirely, since the group valued power above everything else in its harsh reputation. Other commanders worried that a damaged reputation would seriously affect future operations, fearing news of weakness might spread quickly among rival mercenary groups and employers alike. Aureus accepted his decision since Gungrave remained their leader, stating she held no objections, while Kaguya quietly agreed as well, trusting his judgment completely despite lingering doubts. Gungrave then suggested pausing their strategic discussion, deciding they should think more clearly about tactics, only after eating a proper meal together as a group. Tasting the food, Gungrave silently grimaced, admitting internally that it truly wasn't good, while Aureus awkwardly confessed her squad simply lacked anyone skilled enough at cooking. Gungrave reassured her that he never meant to place blame directly on her, yet admitted honestly that having no competent cook remained a persistent, serious problem overall. Kaguya remarked she hadn't realized how disadvantageous this situation truly was for morale, while Gungrave pointed out nobody within their entire group could prepare genuinely delicious food. They imagined how much stronger they'd fight with satisfying meals, since battlefield entertainment already felt limited, mostly to simple gambling and unremarkable food shared during quiet moments. Gungrave complained he had never properly hired a cook, having wrongly assumed one member was just collecting wages without contributing anything useful to the group whatsoever. Suddenly, TG, commander of the archery unit, burst in asking whether Gungrave was present, having completely forgotten to attend the earlier scheduled strategy meeting himself. Ignoring the missed meeting entirely, Teg insisted there was something urgent he needed everyone to see immediately, pulling Gungrave away from the table without further explanation. Confused commanders gathered outside, learning vaguely about some lost child, though nobody understood exactly why this situation felt strange enough to summon Gungrave personally. Gungrave scolded them for skipping important meetings, yet somehow all showing up together the moment something unusual, like a lost child, appeared nearby unexpectedly. Kukuga, commander of the 1st Infantry Unit, admitted even she felt curious about the lost child, especially given how unusual finding one felt on an active battlefield. Lil, the Magic Engineer Unit commander and equipment manager, quietly confessed shared curiosity too, unable to resist checking out this strange, unexpected discovery herself. Asagi Special Operations Captain and Chief Equipment Appraiser admitted strong interest in whoever had wandered this far, refusing to miss witnessing the encounter personally. Gungrave sighed, calling his subordinates problem children who possessed real talent yet struggled cooperating before finally deciding to see this so-called lost child himself. Curious commanders gathered near the tent, wondering aloud whether this mysterious stranger truly seemed as strange as Teg had excitedly claimed during his earlier interruption. Teg hesitated before explaining, warning the others they probably wouldn't believe what happened, while Kaguya pressed him further, asking exactly where this stranger had appeared from. Teg insisted the man had simply materialized right in front of him without warning, leaving everyone else stunned and confused by such an impossible sudden claim. Aureus wondered if this connected to Aurelius's rumored wise man magic, though she quickly dismissed the idea, believing such ancient transference magic had long since vanished completely. Gungrave reasoned that if even the magical genius Aureus denied this possibility so firmly, then something truly unprecedented must have actually occurred here today. Studying the sleeping man's features, Asagi noted, he resembled people from her distant homeland, prompting Kuga to remark that this discovery felt genuinely unusual indeed. Asagi clarified that people from her homeland differed from ordinary humans, while Gungrave recalled she originally hailed from the distant eastern region beyond their territory. Kukuga wondered if this stranger's people were somehow denser than normal humans, and Asagi confirmed exactly that, leaving Gungrave silently repeating the odd word internally. The women speculated whether smooth skin suggested wealthy merchant origins, though Teg pointed out his hands lacked calluses, while Kaguya wondered if he seemed like a shabby villager instead. Kaguya admitted her time at the temple never revealed anyone quite like him, while Asagi wondered if he could actually be born into royalty somewhere distant. Gungrave concluded there seemed to be no clear answer, noting the stranger's ordinary face contrasted sharply with his mysterious presence, unlike any farmer or laborer nearby. Studying his simple white shirt and indigo pants, Gungrave admitted the outfit appeared normal on the surface, yet something about it felt deeply unsettling. Examining the fabric closely, Gungrave marveled that its craftsmanship surpassed anything achievable through modern methods, representing technology entirely beyond their world's current understanding. He noted the impeccable thread spacing without a single fray, adding that despite its small collarless design, the shirt somehow fit perfectly without buttons. Gungrave admired how the fabric shone faintly while remaining remarkably durable, admitting he had never encountered material quite like this anywhere in his life. He imagined how mass-producing such a shirt could bring incredible fortune to any clothing guild, before turning his attention to the equally impressive, valuable pants. He observed the pants' perfectly aligned pockets, meticulous stitching, and subtle indigo pattern, all combining function and design into an exceptionally efficient structure. Overwhelmed, Gungrave declared this outfit alone a treasure, feeling it condensed centuries of future technology into a single remarkable crystallization of wisdom itself. Gungrave questioned whether the wider world truly differed this much, while Kaguya admitted the atmosphere surrounding him felt like an entirely different reality altogether. Meanwhile, the sleeping stranger worried internally about his troublesome situation, relieved slightly that these strangers seemed to view him as merely a harmless, bumbling idiot. Gungrave turned to Altros first, asking his opinion, and T noted the stranger's condition had improved greatly despite arriving earlier drenched in sweat, mud, and exhaustion. No hostility could be sensed from him, so Gungrave decided against killing the sleeping man, while Kaguya confessed her curiosity leaned toward his strange, unfamiliar clothing instead. Even as someone fascinated by inventions, Kaguya couldn't identify these threads, wondering whether they came from unknown biological organisms or plants she had never encountered before. Suddenly, Asagi wondered if this stranger matched someone described within ancient legends, and Kaguya froze silently, visibly troubled by some private realization she chose not to voice. Releasing him now risked letting the temple claim protection over him, Kaguya feared, though acting too hastily might also endanger her and silence everyone involved. Noticing her hesitation, Gungrave promised to question her further later, but Kaguya brushed it off as nothing, quickly turning away before anyone could press the matter. Everyone was told to wait outside while Gungrave entered alone, and the stranger greeted him cheerfully the moment he stirred awake from his exhausted sleep. Nervously, Shuri asked whether this world was Japan, though Gungrave clarified that Japan, from what little he understood, was simply some distant, unfamiliar island nation. Urgently, Kaguya asked whether Shuri had come from beyond the outer sea, startling him, while the gathered commanders leaned closer, eager to catch his confused answer. None of them had ever heard of another continent beyond their own, and both Teg and Asagi looked stunned, wondering aloud if crossing that ocean was truly possible. According to Gungrave, the outer sea referred to violent waters encircling their entire continent, a barrier long believed impossible for anyone to safely cross alive. Ferocious creatures and raging storms filled that surrounding ocean, leaving their vast continent essentially isolated, since no traveler could survive venturing far beyond its rocky coastline. Should this prove true, Gungrave admitted, it marked a monumental discovery, meaning an entirely separate world existed, and humans had somehow crossed between the two. Rubbing his temple in frustration, he admitted the story kept stalling the more he thought it through, quietly questioning what such an extraordinary truth might mean. Azuma Shuri was this man's name, claiming origins from Hiroshima within Japan, and shockingly, he revealed being 20 years old despite his notably youthful appearance. A plan for moving forward became necessary, Gungrave admitted, though sending Shuri home remained impossible since that distant world's exact location stayed entirely unknown to them. Discarding him seemed like the fastest solution, Gungrave reasoned, since unnecessary burdens weren't something they could easily afford. Yet something about that choice left him hesitant. Straightforward, perhaps even carefree, was how Shuri privately judged this armored stranger, concluding that despite his intimidating look, Gungrave likely harbored no genuinely bad intentions. Abandoning him in the streets didn't sit right with Gungrave, so hiring Shuri for odd jobs became their final practical option after weighing every possible choice. Desperately, Shuri begged to stay, promising to do anything required of him, while Gungrave, unnervingly calm, wondered aloud which unit might best take him in. Gungrave tells someone that they lack the luxury of adding a person unable to use magic engineering to Lil's unit. Lil confirms it will not be hers. Lil explains that a man incapable of using magic would only create problems, especially since her unit consists entirely of women, so she cannot take him either. Gungrave notes that no unit can accept a man who lacks both magic engineering and magic, since both women's units are made up of magic engineers and users. A cool captain argues that placing someone unable to fight into her special operations force makes no sense, ruling her unit out, and Gungrave simply agrees with a nod. An armored captain glances back and states plainly that Shuri cannot join frontline combat either, matching the 2nd Infantry unit, leaving Gungrave to admit his unit is out too. Another captain adds that Shuri does not suit an intelligence unit. Someone calls it a stretch, and a third notes he cannot even ride a horse properly. A pale-haired woman offers that her unit could take Shuri if he learns to wield a weapon, maybe training him as a plain archer. But Teg firmly refuses. The woman smiles darkly and adds that Shuri would need Spartan-style training first, leaving him visibly nervous at the sudden suggestion behind her back. The same captain warns that placing Shuri under Kuka's unit would surely be the end of him, leaving everyone wondering if Teg's unit remains the only choice left. Later, in a quiet room, Shuri lies restless before sitting up suddenly, deciding out loud that he feels like cooking something to ease his troubled mind. Carrying his pot outside, Shuri startles the mercenaries gathered among the tents, when a soldier suddenly questions whether he can genuinely cook at all, doubting him openly. Confident despite the doubt, Shuri offers to prepare a simple cream stew, stirring the pot slowly as steam rises and curious eyes gather closely around him. The moment the mercenary tastes it, he reacts violently, jolting upright while shouting that the dish is absolutely delicious, beyond anything he has ever expected before. He continues praising the stew, calling it shockingly good, noting its subtle sweetness from milk and its tangy sharpness from melted cheese, balancing everything perfectly. More mercenaries taste it and immediately approve, calling it a flawless dish and admitting they have never eaten anything this satisfying even out on the battlefield. The captain agrees that this meal will strengthen them for the next fight, while others marvel at the mysterious new flavor Shuri managed to create. Watching this, Lil admits she needs to learn from him too, while another woman decides she should improve her own cooking before the next feast. Someone points out how rare it is for Lil to look truly satisfied, and Lil admits she genuinely is, calling the food incredibly delicious right now. One woman declares that delicious food is simply delicious, and nothing else about it truly matters, while another calmly agrees that good food is simply good. As the mercenaries eat together outside the tents, Shuri watches quietly, realizing his story about crossing the sea might not be entirely a lie after all. Inside a quiet knight's chamber, a young knight clenches his fists while insisting that everyone must do their utmost to protect Shuri, since knowledge from beyond the sea could change everything. In a busy kitchen tent, chains rattle softly as a boy chops onions nearby, while a knight admits that losing someone with Shuri's rare skills would be an unforgivable waste. Surrounded by grateful soldiers near the campsite tents, Shuri blushes and waves off their praise, insisting his cooking is nothing special despite their enthusiastic and heartfelt compliments. Gungrave places a firm hand on Shuri's shoulder, welcoming him warmly into the mercenary band, and Shuri quietly responds with sincere gratitude, sealing their new partnership together. Standing among busy tents and soldiers preparing for another day, Shuri promises to do his best, while Gungrave reminds him that their entire camp now depends on his cooking. Centuries later, storytellers recall a hero's tale destined to be passed down through generations, born from an era when the Saber-Yu continent burned under nearly 100 years of war. History remembers Gungrave Denju Apurata as the great king who unified the continent, revered as humanity's oldest ruler, and celebrated as the very first and last true hero king. Before the royal court, a curious vassal asks the aging king how he managed to end the brutal warring states period that had scarred the land for so long. Everyone assumed the king would credit brilliant strategy or unmatched combat skill. Yet King Gungrave calmly answered that a simple, hearty stew was what truly ended the chaos. He recalls once believing that military strength, personal charisma, and mastery over diplomacy alone were enough ingredients to build a truly wonderful and lasting nation for his people. Raising a single finger, the king admits that reality proved far harsher, since even possessing all that power could never guarantee loyal followers or genuine trust from others. Surrounded by rich, colorful dishes, he explains that people simply needed satisfying meals every day, since abundance and flavor alone create goodwill and open everyone's guarded hearts. Overwhelmed with emotion, the king confesses that it was his dear friend who taught him this simple truth from the very bottom of his grateful heart. Standing together beneath open skies, the 9 heroes are remembered forever as King Gungrave's companions, whose shared journey turned an age of war into lasting abundance and peace. Around the Rienbell Hills, a mounted warrior smashes by the enemy line. Back that control, formations crumble as retreat spreads, signaling that the enemy's main force has finally broken. Before long afterward, cavalry units surge ahead together, sweeping around the field and closing resistance by coordinated pursuit. Later, survivors go back to encampment, fatigue granting way to ease as news of victory spreads within the soldiers. Merely then does the cook realize his dish reinforced spirits, silently supporting the outcome of the fight. After the fighting ends, bloodied soldiers stand local, abandoning the cook amazed by the battlefield. Chances later, Azuma Shuri reflects on his arrival and fresh job within the mercenary encampment. As composed returns, a dish is shared, signaling reward, recovery, and the near of combat. Worry follows when origins are questioned, creating tension about faith, survival, and belonging within encampment. Finally, clarity is sought as he prepares to clarify himself and prevent future misunderstandings there. Shuri confesses his homeland, abandoning the mercenary commander amazed as the space sinks into quiet. Doubt spreads suddenly, causing abrupt movement and breaking the tentative compose near the table there. Focus turns towards ancient legends describing gods, creation, and a land tied to their disappearance. Long-held beliefs color, linking humanity and magic to divine origins elapsed lower generations around years. Knowledge deepens as Kamukura is mentioned, reshaping how Shuri's appearance is finally perceived within encampment. Ancient people are described as wise beings who presented magic, shaping the continent's forgotten history. Meanwhile, Shuri listens in uncertainty, gradually realizing this realm operates on rules unlike his former. Imagination races as he envisions fantasy ideals, But the world of monsters feels overwhelming there. That enthusiasm fades when it becomes plain he lacks any talent for magic at all. Uniform so comfort arrives as his cookery is recognized as a skill value relying on. Talk turns serious as Shuri learns certain organizations carefully watch people connected to divine legends. Focus shifts to a massive religious state described as powerful, intolerant, and deeply influential around nations. Understanding dawns that his homeland could invite peril, compelling care in how he presents himself. Instruction follows, advising patients in a plain job to avoid unnecessary focus until matters settle. Purpose forms silently as Shuri agrees to attention on his duties, trusting effort and gratitude to carry him ahead. Within the tent, Shuri considers and provide, pausing as his mind drifts towards what he might ask. Instead, outside, the encampment bustles until an unexpected encounter draws his focus and interrupts his straying. Recognition follows as he recalls her job within the mercenary troop, bringing mild tension and interest. Awkwardness builds as teasing conduct clashes with Shuri's straightforward nature, abandoning him visibly unsettled. Finally, separation occurs near the shelters, closing the exchange while remaining uncertainty follows back him. Within a silent tent, Shuri meets a magic craftsman who shows interest after learning about his serve under Gungrave. Excitement surfaces as Shuri proposes creating cookery utensils matched to this unknown realm. Accounts follow, showing how magic crafting reshapes objects and grants them specialized functions. Concepts take form as urgent utensils are imagined, blending everyday cookery needs with magical methods. Frustration turns into purpose when Shuri recognizes proper utensils could finally improve meals work for all people. Shuri inspects the unusable cutting board, realizing bad utensils have silently hindered his cookery efforts. Motivation sparks within the craftsman, whose assurance and interest shift the mood towards present work. Activity erupts within the workshop as work begins despite no delay, catching Shuri slightly guard. Raw materials are assembled, combining metal and wood, while magical force reshapes them with precision. Isekai'd knife emerges, abandoning Shuri amazed by the overwhelming power back. Magical craftsmanship. Shuri listens as magic is stated, saying how infusing energy into metal can increase hardness during crafting, causing from his former realm. He mentions heating metal and removing impurities, impressing the craftsman. Amazement replaces assurance as unknown terms reveal understanding more than local knowledge. Uncertainty builds when scientific concepts clash with magical training, requiring clearer account. Composed returns as Shuri breaks it lower, simply sharing flame principles to guide secure, smarter crafting. Within the workshop, Shuri explains his scarce scientific understanding while Lil listens with rising interest. Mind deepen as she connects his account to natural processes, slowly piecing concepts together. Focus shifts to the iron itself, prompting talk about its quality and hidden imperfections. Understanding follows that current magic crafting remains underdeveloped, abandoning impurities unaddressed. Work resumes as Lil begins refining the metal, resolve plain while Shuri watches in amazement. Under intense strain, impurities are forced out as metal is needed, gradually transforming into a refined block. A polished result appears, causing admiration as effort and magic finally pay guard together. Plans move ahead swiftly with plain designs guiding the next stage of crafting. Emptied utensils emerge, allowing Shuri to envision cookery despite no adjustment for the initial years. Exhaustion follows victory, but small adjustments continue as both refine details by calm collaboration. Interest sparks when Shuri asks about Lil's usual serve, catching her guard and shifting the mood. Excitement follows as she explains her joy in experimenting, showing inventions despite no fixed specialty. Demonstrations continue, showing utensils that serve by magic but stay scarce and incomplete. Awareness grows that varied creations are unfinished, usable merely under specific conditions. Interest deepens when Shuri learns spells are written symbols, opening a fresh layer of knowledge. Precise care sign symbols, as Shuri learns how magi spells reshape objects applying stored magical energy. Account deepens when constraints are showed, showing why uncontrolled combinations can cause risky results. A plain question reframes the problem, hinting that timing and coordination lie at the core. Concepts from a second realm emerge, comparing magic to circuits that manage multiple functions safely. Enthusiasm erupts as Lil grasps the plan, quickly viewing Shuri as a person capable of changing magic crafting itself. Talk continues as constraints of magic paper and spell stability are studied, exposing a core flaw. Doubts pile up until a quick plan sparks, cutting by doubt with fresh direction. Energy fills the space as stacking materials is suggested, combining functions by structured transmission. Admiration grows while the concept proves meaningful, plainly affecting the craftsman's passion and purpose. Enthusiasm peaks when the plan is embraced, signaling the beginning of a breakthrough born from shared insight. Lil remained with folded arms, assurance shaping her early reputation though. Few knew her identity. Certainty directed her steps, and years promised that her choices would leave a lasting mark. Talent showed itself as magical craftsmanship, distinct from normal spell work and rooted in precise control. While magic stirred mana by the room, her method mixed by guiding power within materials. By care and attention, objects changed form and energy, proving creation required substance than little. As her path became clearer, Lil agreed to that magical craftsmanship matched her another than pure spellcasting. Long days elapsed with experiments and fieldwork, supporting the troop by inventions and defensive setups. The weight of supplies and burden gradually piled up, especially on those handling the core. Frustration went constant mistakes, but Lil proceeded, believing effort mattered another than results. Unexpected requests changed her attention, opening a fresh direction where her abilities could finally be helpful. Focus gradually turned towards the fresh cook, whose meals left a strong impression regardless of his quiet appearance. Observing him serve from a distance, Lil felt doubt grow, impressed but unsure how to approach him. Instruction from companions forced her ahead, though the meaning backed their speech escaped her at the years. Merely later did knowledge follow, as her interest remained. Despite no plain direction, faced with creating plain cookery utensils, dissatisfaction returned. But this modest task hinted at a fresh point. Examining the designs showed unknown utensils, built on concepts Lil had never encountered ahead of. Observing Shuri's precise work showed skill rooted in order, precision, and quiet assurance. As accounts unfolded, known metalworking principles appeared, but deeper methods hinted at another amazement. When hidden techniques were discussed, exposing understanding deliberately kept from most craftsmen, recollections of strict guild control returned, reminding her that real mastery was often guarded, not shared. Interest took a round as Lil started asking detailed doubts, realizing her knowledge differed greatly from his. Simple accounts unfolded into unknown concepts, challenging what she believed about materials and ranks. Concepts of tiny components creating all matter came her with quick clarity and amazement. Doubts multiplied rapidly, stretching from metal and water to path, room, and the realm itself. By the end, fascination supplanted uncertainty, and Lil agreed to that her understanding was merely a start. Inspection of the iron showed flaws, and Lil decided that impurities needed precise removal. Applying what she had discovered, she focused on the flow of magical energy, attempting anything fresh. Belief directed her care as theory turned into training, blending carbon into the heated metal. Clarity came with victory, and the results surpassed every task she had produced ahead of. The achievement at once were its value, as the emptied tool promised better meals ahead. Doubt remained as Lil questioned whether such refined results would ever be completely appreciated. Observing Shuri's relentless attention showed a craftsman driven by obsession instead than adjustment. That understanding became clear silently, signaling the end of one intense phase of serve. By pushing her constraints and combining each lesson discovered, Lil finished a complex magical stove. Working beside Shuri caused renewed stimulation, as his concepts proceeded to challenge and elevate her craft. Though inspired by borrowed understanding, Lil recognized the serve as anything formed by her former care. Pride became clear and silently, born from utensils that transformed concepts into anything true. Recover went, and with it the understanding that this creation would outlast conflict and stay in regular path. Seasons of effort sensed justified, as sacrifice and persistence finally aligned. In the end, she comprehended the opportunity arrived by Shuri, who opened the path ahead. After finishing her serve, Lil rested peacefully until the scent of a fresh meal drew her focus. One mouthful caused amazement, as the consistency and taste exceeded every task she anticipated from meat. Rich juices and balanced sauce landed smoothly, abandoning no sign of bad flavor back. Uniform odd supplies discovered harmony under precise work and thoughtful spices. Observing Shuri cook, Lil recognized real creation at serve, where plain elements became anything completely fresh. After the dish, Lil received fresh requests, as Shuri hoped for utensils that could better handle supplies. While working together, interest returned, and Lil wondered how his concepts appeared so naturally. Learning that failure was part of his experience challenged her image of effortless talent. Stories of severe training and constant errors showed how skill was gradually built. Knowledge went, and Lil saw that devotion, not perfection, formed the foundation of Shuri's craft. Shuri reflected silently on his habits, always searching for ways to improve flavor by calm effort. Listening carefully, Lil absorbed the plan that creativity grew from persistence instead than talent itself. That consideration remained as they sat together, reshaping how she viewed innovation and regular serve. When Lil served her inventions, pride mixed with uncertainty as flaws became impossible to ignore. Unfinished utensils piled up, showing how comfort and excess effort strained both progress and supplies. Lil sat in silent frustration, encircled by half-finished concepts that felt like punishment for her complacency. A forgotten board surprised focus, and its plain design quickly appeared helpful in an unexpected way. Fresh perspective came hard, showing how scarce thinking had restrained the original concept. By reimagining its point, the tool gained use as a means to move goods safely and efficiently. Gratitude when understanding, as Lil agreed to that instruction had transformed failure into meaningful creation. Encircled by old utensils, Lil resolved to stop discarding mistakes and search for point within them. A renewed aim took shape, focusing on creations signified to serve people and improve regular path. Seeking validation, she readied to present anything newly finished instead than a second crude plan. Assurance supplanted reluctance as she showed a small object, calmly claiming it as the emptied result. Work went at once, and the demonstration became the start of another deliberate path ahead. Lil's demonstration started with a small throw, closing in a delayed explosion that carved into the foreign ground. Amazement went at once, but she continued composed, unfazed by the destructive result. Plain rules governed the device, ensuring it responded merely under precise conditions. Those safeguards reflected precise refinement formed by outside feedback and constant testing. Observing the outcome, companions understood her serve had crossed into a fresh level of controlled ingenuity. Work proceeded as Lil pointed towards a foreign spot, calmly explaining the next device to be tested. Seconds elapsed and quiet ahead of flames erupted exactly where predicted, abandoning controlled destruction back. Doubts went as constraints between magic use and engineering grew increasingly unclear. A second stone showed delayed ignition, burning momentarily ahead of vanishing despite no sign. Recognition became clear and aid was promised, signaling a shift from spectacle to serious investment. Astonishment landed as multiple effects appeared within chances, challenging each assumption about spellcasting motion. Closer inspection showed the object itself gripped the secret instead than a newly formed spell-dense engravings covered its color, showing layers of slowly embedded magical functions. Those markings moved a structured system, combining control, activation, and stability into one design. By this approach, Lil transformed magic into a managed work, overtaking danger with deliberate precision. At initial, Lil dismissed praise, recognizing her immaturity and the constraints of relying merely on talent. Reflection went, showing that real creativity required learning from companions instead than remaining itself. During disordered utensils and concepts, effort became the missing piece she could no longer ignore. Looking ahead, she resolved to grow into a person capable of creating with point and vision. In years, Lil Blanche would be recalled as a figure whose inventions formed culture and future generations. Around years, Lil's stove evolved by countless refinements, becoming a vital part of everyday path. From those concepts, varied foundational utensils appeared, supporting transportation, communication, and modern infrastructure. Her inventive spirit set the groundwork for progress, earning her recognition as a guiding force of creation. Though born during conflict, her utensils ultimately enriched normal lives and defined an entire era. Choosing humility around training, Lil moved away from power, abandoning a legacy that endured despite her. The school founded in her identity broadened into a major center of research, education, and proceeded innovation. While teaching freely, Lil maintained her former serve and left back plain principles for the institution. She warned that technology driven by conflict would inevitably distort progress and devastate the future. Instead, her vision stressed prosperity, burden, and patience by peaceful development. Those ideals endured, shaping the Academy's spirit and defining creativity as a force signified to benefit humanity. Records describe Lil as warm and cheerful, often recalled for smiling around plain meals and quiet joy. Focus then shifts to Azuma Shuri, a cook whose attention and odd intensity defined his approach. Alongside him remained Yamajishi, a longtime friend who shared his days and comprehended his habits. Their bond formed early, rising steadily by seasons of school and shared schedules. Uniform then, Shuri's odd cookery left strong impressions, hinting at an unusual path ahead. Early lunches shifted disastrous, producing meals so unappealing that eating became a regular struggle. Week after week, the condition worsened, causing worry as Shuri's health visibly declined. Unable to ignore it, a near friend finally confronted the issue, prompting an awkward understanding, a plain suggestion sliced by the uncertainty, waking Shuri to what he had overlooked. From that instant, progress went swiftly, and his cookery started to transition for the better. Within 2 weeks, Shuri's lunches changed entirely, becoming colorful and slowly readied meals. As years elapsed, Closeness formed, and Yamagishi realized that Shuri was otherwise a normal child. Classes showed little exceptional, though occasional conduct hinted at odd unpredictability. Worry landed when he vanished during a school journey, turning a common morning into uncertainty. The search landed in the cookhouse, where Shuri focused happily on cookery, unaware of the worry he caused. After witnessing order firsthand, Yamagishi started to uncertainty whether Shuri was really exceptional. A second visit showed plain joys, where unknown lands became sources of interest instead than talent. Years moved on, and their friendship proceeded steadily by the transition into middle school. Stability moved as Shuri adapted, blending in until he was seen as a normal student. His fate changed during a school festival, where his actions finally drew widespread focus. With assurance, Shuri announced a special meal, determined to provide another than anything normal. Work started at once, as he assembled supplies itself while enthusiasm landed among classmates. Refusing shortcuts, he maintained the meal must be unique to that instant and location. Cookery progressed smoothly, directed by plain steps and shared burden at the stall. Slowly selected supplies arrived together, putting the foundation for a taste few anticipated. Work started with precise handling, as supplies were cleaned, sliced, and readied. Despite no haste, flame went precision, coating shrimp and stir, frying flesh, and produce ahead of putting them away. Sauce arrived together next. Simmered momentarily and grew dense until it clung smoothly to each piece. When added around noodles, the meal arrived at its last form, rich and complete. Crowds responded at once, and the stall's victory confirmed the effort had paid guard. After schooling, Shuri successfully ran a restaurant, with merely a few notable events signaling those last seasons. Throughout that years, Yamagishi stayed near, sharing normal days of study, play, and quiet companionship. Their bond grew by shared meals, turning friendship into anything calm and reliable. Trouble yet discovered Yamagishi on occasion, but chances of composed went just as often. One summer, he traveled itself overseas, disappearing momentarily ahead of coming back just ahead of school resumed. Regardless of remaining concern, Yamagishi's assurance and skill left Shuri with little reason to question his choices. Schooling came silently, signaling the end of known days and the beginning of separate paths. Plans were considered casually, showing a composed purpose to stay unchanged regardless of doubt. Training promised difficulty, but Shuri selected persistence, determined to see the challenge by. Looking again on mistakes and progress, the bond between them continued calm as adulthood approached. As their call drew to a near, the exchange felt warm and complete, became by quiet appreciation and unspoken faith. Night became clear in, and recover became necessary as separation approached, abandoning remaining mind back. Years elapsed, despite Noah's second meeting turning that farewell into an unintended last instant. Seasons later, the realm changed dramatically, placing Shuri in the world well more than every task when imagined. Encircled by unknown people and cultures, his story restarted in a second realm where a fresh chapter silently started. His care slammed onto the board as constant cookery attempts did not. Frustration rising with every mistake, concern returned while he reflected on talent and effort. Unable to understand their meaning regardless of experience advice, resolve silently supplanted reluctance as he proceeded working, choosing persistence around explanations. Days elapsed in the Mercenary encampment as he carried provisions and changed to his fresh job. Studying unknown seasonings, he agreed to that progress would come by patience and calm learning. Information about few seasonings returned, showing their scarce production and hesitant origins. Tension landed along the coast as rumors of conflict around salt arrived at the encampment. Worry grew when the lack of salt threatened meals and spirits, turning provisions into a precedence. After the fight, supplies increased, and plans formed to expand the cookhouse staff. While cookery resumed, a subtle transition in taste surprised his focus, hinting at a fresh possibility. Movement in the forest surprised focus as a lone figure elapsed silently between trees. A quick stumble went, scattering meals and causing worry ahead of composed swiftly returned. Details appeared about her job as an intelligence captain, became by patience and sharp awareness. Her experience as a shrine maiden and warrior became plain, formed by order and duty. Grace defined her appearance, abandoning a strong impression that said the quiet respect near her. Shuri assured the towering man she was unharmed, observing as he silently lifted up a fallen plate. Known as Altros, the quiet giant brought the new infantry battalion with energy and order. Regardless of his imposing frame, he rarely spoke, earning respect by sheer appearance and unwavering actions. Later, Shuri met a young boy in the woods who informed her of someone's actions local. Recognizing a known pattern, Shuri decided it was Kuga when again causing trouble. Whenever frustration strained him, Kuga would retreat into the forest to study itself with his sword. Shuri stated this habit to the companions, prompting a quiet acknowledgement from the boy. Image 3 back at camp. The scent of shrimp stew filled the air, drawing attention from the soldiers. Some commended the meal, appreciating its rarity and taste, while seated near the communal tables. Later, as drinks were added, compliments preceded. The young cook proudly shared his shrimp secret. Shrimp and fish, while abundant, couldn't be stored lengthy, showing them prized local delicacies. Reflecting on Earth's advanced transport systems, Gungrave silently wondered when he might go back. Upon learning that Kuga had gone to the forest, he assumed the swordsman was training again. Though concerned, he stated that near Kuga might worsen things, better to let him be. Lacking sword knowledge himself, Gungrave felt unqualified to provide Kuga any helpful advice. Gungrave recognized Kuga's skill, placing him within the few, with real combat potential alongside Altros and Alias. Within warriors, none resembled the prowess of the real sword masters. Learning this, the boy grew excited, asking if magical sword techniques really remained in their realm. Regardless of his interest, Gungrave explained that Kuga's swordsmanship was usual little enchanted or extraordinary. Yet, the boy hoped Kuga was separate, a swordsman who might one morning wield magic. Kuga, known for his physical energy and sword mastery, lacked any magical ability. A pure warrior. Gungrave started recounting an instant when Kuga recklessly advanced into the enemy's front line. Encircled and strained by hundreds of arrows, his condition became critical and seemingly hopeless. But astonishingly, Kuga appeared unharmed, cutting by each threat with unmatched precision. Witnessing that, the boy understood Kuga looked like a manga hero, another than a normal soldier. Altros's immense energy and Gungrave's adaptive thought helped them aid Kuga regardless of the divide in power. Yet they admitted that within Kuga's close-range domain, none of them could really compete. Gungrave confessed that despite no steady effort, Kuga's progress would swiftly surpass him. He tried to grasp Kuga's personal conflict with his sword, admitting it continued a mystery. Their experience consultation showed Kuga's thinking was complex, layered with emotion, more than normal comprehension. As the two dined together, the boy sensed a disconnect between genius and prodigy. Though concerned, Gungrave admitted Kuga's struggles weren't anything he could purpose. Regardless of that, he smiled, trusting Kuga's independence and energy to guide him by. The young cook added a second drink, silently reflecting on Gungrave's faith in his comrade. The next morning, Kuga again vanished into the woods, abandoning anxiety back. After dark at night, the boy wrestled with reluctance, then quickly bolted out with purpose. Venturing into the woods, he discovered the forest well darker than anticipated. As nerves crept in, he recalled an open clearing local and cautiously pressed ahead. Peering ahead, he finally spotted a person remaining itself, training under the moonlight. Bathed in quiet and resolve, Kuga swung his blade with unwavering attention. Hidden in the shadows, the boy watched Kuga unleash swift and forceful strikes. Every action sliced the room with precision under the cold moonlight, radiating raw energy. To the observer, Kuga's order and stance appeared breathtaking, more than normal skill. Compared to regular fighters, his technique felt like anything from a second realm completely. Noticing the appearance, Kuga shifted with a grin, calling out to Shuri playfully. Shuri apologized, admitting his worry about Kuga's frequent visits to the forest. He couldn't help but admire Kuga's striking looks, both elegant and intimidating in fight. Kuga, amused, invited him to sit, shifting the tone to anything lighter. They sat together, exchanging mind, as Kuga confessed how training had consumed him entirely. Though unable to fix things, Shuri's willingness to listen caused a small logic of ease. Kuga agreed to the opportunity to talk, hoping it might lift some of the burden. With a composed face, he admitted he'd fallen into a slump lately. Though companions contributed to the conflict effort, Kuga felt all he could provide was his sword. Regardless of acknowledging the use of utensils, he understood he couldn't rely on that excuse forever. In the end, he believed real energy arrived from one's former care, not from devices. Kuga reflected on how his sword couldn't surpass the destructive power of modern utensils. He admitted to rising anxious, feeling supplanted by innovations like explosive stones. That uncertainty weakened him. Every comparison rendered his sword feel slower, less effective. Shuri suggested the issue might lie in the heart alarm, feeding a cycle of decline. Though inexperienced, he hoped simply being there for Kuga might help in some way. While readying meals, Shuri quickly recalled anything important and left the cookhouse. He approached Kuga, who was yet outside, and gained his focus. Shuri pointed out Kuga's requirement and suggested addressing it with a dish. He went back with cookery provisions and supplies, ready to make anything plain and satisfying. Shuri decided to work a horse mackerel meal, considering it suitable for a after-dark dish. Shuri said that readying a dish for a person trying was entirely acceptable. He set out the main supplies: horse mackerel, tartar sauce, and pepper. For the sauce, he used eggs, vegetables, mayonnaise, vinegar, salt, pepper, and parsley. He detailed the separate mayonnaise method, stressing the importance of gradual, precise blending. Confident in his work, Shuri started cookery, ready to demonstrate the use of his effort. Shuri discussed he would fry the fish, which Kuga seemed pleased to hear. He slowly separated the scales and filleted the mackerel into 3 pieces. Little bones were taken out, salt was placed, and ginger juice was applied for taste. Applying a custom refrigerator Lil had built, Shuri stored the fish to keep it fresh. After placing the tray within, he closed the lid and waited for it to chill. Shuri said that he needed another year's ahead of cookery, catching her guard with his composed reply. To ease the weight, he offered her sake, holding out a bottle and cup with a hopeful grin. She agreed to happily, savoring the drink, and remarked that little beat good sake after a long morning. He admitted he rarely drank, explaining that his cook duties required a plain palate. Yet, Shuri encouraged her to relax, gently advising she let travel for when. Shuri suggested that Kuga ease her thoughts by letting travel, reminding her that recover could bring clarity. He encouraged her to relax, hoping it would help her features her worries with a calmer heart. During his former training, he had tried and forced himself harder, merely to feel crushed by failure. A wise teacher had when told him to eat, sleep, and drink ahead of thinking too deeply. After assuming that advice, Shuri understood overthinking had held him again another than his former constraints. Kukuga listened silently, her face softening as Shuri's speech sank in. She opened up about her recent struggles in fight, blaming her size and doubting her energy. Shuri recalled a person when believing he would surpass them, reminding her that effort often outweighs constraints. Kuga's gazes expanded as Shuri questioned whether such deep pain could be dismissed so readily. He then commended her swordplay, assuring her that hitting a wall wasn't the same as asking an end. Shuri told Kuga not to give up, believing her energy arrived with a burden to inspire. He saw her as a person who could lead by work, showing companions what perseverance looked like. Kuka silently reflected on his speech, the plan of a wall start to transition in her thoughts. As their talk became clear, she asked if it was years to cook, and he promised. Together they started the last steps, cleaning the mackerel and readying it with care and spices. Oil was heated slowly while sansho leaves were prepped and fried until crisp and fragrant. Next, they mixed the leaves into panko, letting it recover ahead of coating the mackerel in smooth batter. When the oil arrived at full flame, the fish was fried golden on both sides, then drained thoroughly. With tartar sauce placed, the crispy mackerel was plated, bringing the meal together with finesse. Kukuga admired the result, impressed by the beauty and taste of Shuri's expertly crafted creation. Kuga accepted a mouthful and lit up with joy, praising the crisp consistency and balanced flavors. Satisfied and full, she complimented Shuri's skill, impressed by the care he put into work. He said how a gentle slice affected flavor, showing how precision mattered uniform in plain actions. Understanding came her technique mattered another than raw power, and she had overlooked that. Energized by this insight, Kuga thanked Shuri, feeling she had discovered a fresh path ahead. Shuri admitted his misunderstanding, feeling he might have forced too difficult despite no realizing it. Kukuga, however, was energized and maintained on training when another ahead of resting. The next morning, her spirit continued serious, determined to retain that clarity. In fight, she fought with renewed point, earning praise for her brilliant transformation. The mercenary cavalry charged ahead, aiming to break the enemy vanguard in one swift strike. Unexpected blasts tore by their formation, abandoning uncertainty and terror within the troops. Back the lines, infantrymen celebrated the devastating power of explosive stones. Kukuga, captain of the initial unit, readied for fight, proud to lead from the front. While his men fought fiercely, the mage unit continued the real force back their advantage. Kuga wielded a one great sword, when proud of defeating foes by skill itself. Lil's invention's timed ignition stones changed the tide of conflict with devastating ease. His unit marveled at the power, hopeful it would crush enemies quicker. Yet Kuga sensed conflicted, missing the pride of personal energy in direct combat. As explosions supplanted swordplay, uncertainty crept in. Victory by utensils itself no longer felt right. Rising up in the slums, Kuga honed his swordsmanship by hardship and aid from Gungrave. Seasons of brutal training and living forged his energy, granting him background more than his years. Gungrave, a natural prodigy, rivaled him readily, mastering techniques and chances. Now that Gungrave commands as Captain Kuga, refuses to let him features peril at the front. To plane his friend's path to greatness, Kuga swears to lead though, his former blade begins to dull. Kuga's blade faltered as uncertainty clouded his judgment, thrown guard by strain to match modern utensils, remaining at a symbolic peak. He questioned if he had immediately arrived at the end of his potential. His subordinate hesitated, preferring to master explosives around swordsmanship. Fury surged as Kuga reminded them that fighters must fight with energy, not shortcuts. But regardless of his plea, the unit believed survival and efficiency mattered another than pride in combat. Every night, Kuga isolated himself in the forest, training in silence after meals. With fight near, he forced himself to recover lost skill and assurance by mirror training. Harnessing intense attention, he conjured an illusory version of his ideal self as a sparring partner. Fierce clashes moved, steel meeting illusion in relentless rhythm, regardless of his efforts. Reluctance continued. He knew he yet couldn't match the warrior he once was. Kuga remained itself, strained by uncertainty and failure, sensing his blade had lost its edge. He questioned the shift towards relying on utensils, recognizing the decline in his unit's order. Visions of fallen comrades haunted him. What if utensils did not when they were really needed? Regret echoed in imagined last mind, wishing for energy, not another explosives. Resolved, he selected to fight despite no regret, determined to give his fate uniform if it signified ruin. Kuga resumed his training, determined to demonstrate that real energy lies within. Sensing a person local, he paused and named out to the quiet observer. Shuri moved from the shadows, holding a lantern and offering an awkward apology. Though fresh, Shuri's cookery had warmed the encampment, brightening spirits and uniting the troop. But deep lower, Kuga continued cautious. He couldn't bring himself to completely faith the cheerful newcomer. Regardless of their appearance, no one really knew why Shuri had appeared on Colin Bell Hill that morning. His dishes were odd, his abilities a mystery. No one understood where he'd trained. Kuga sensed anything was guard, but selected to keep those mind buried for now. Shuri had went him into the forest, driven by interest and worry. Realizing Shuri realized his inner struggle, Kuga silently recognized how well he yet had to grow. Sitting beside Shuri in the silent forest, Kuga admitted he was stuck in a slump. He confessed his sword couldn't match the results of utensils, regardless of his efforts. What started as a composed discussion before long turned into a flood of frustration and reflection. Realizing he envied his comrades, Kuga questioned his former weakness. As he sank into uncertainty, Shuri's plain, timely speech broke by his spiral of self-pity. Shuri casually questioned if Kuga was hungry, catching him guard with the simplicity. Though it seemed childish, Shuri's way of addressing worry by meals sensed oddly effective. Kuga discovered himself assessing if his worries really mattered at all. He watched in silent awe. Shuri's precision in cookery rivaled swordplay. As Shuri gave him sake while they waited, Kuga gradually relaxed, surprised by the pleasure in such plain gestures. Shuri gave no solutions, merely composed aid, asking Kuga to simply relax and reflect. By their talk, Kuga saw Shuri in a fresh light, smart, empathetic, and silently reliable. He regretted ever doubting him, guilt stirring as he recalled his earlier doubt. Regardless of his normal looks, Shuri had earned faith and endured his former unseen struggles. Though lacking energy, Shuri's kindness and wisdom left a greater mark than any weapon. Kuga admitted he when believed his abilities had arrived at their ceiling. Regardless of lacking natural gifts, every fight survived had formed him, showing him stronger. Now he fought with pride. Constraints no longer defined him. Shuri gently objected, urging him not to diminish himself with speech of defeat. With composed assurance, Shuri reminded him his sword wasn't emptied, he'd simply hit a wall, not the end. Kuga's heart trembled as he recalled the lives taken by his blade, doubting its beauty. But Shuri's speech remained, and he started to question if he could yet break by. Perhaps the key wasn't technique, but anything deep within himself he had overlooked. As he reflected, Shuri silently emptied, readying the dish. With a warm grin, Shuri served the meals, reducing Kuga's heavy mind for an instant. The initial mouthful amazed Kuga. The crisp shell and tender within strained him with delight. He commended the flavors excitedly, enchanted by the nutrition of spices and consistency. Uniform Shuri's precise cutting technique left an impression, described as gentle and skilled. Kuga reflected inwardly his experience battles relied too much on force. He finally noticed it, a style all his former, a path not of energy, but of unique skill. Seasons of living had forged Kuga's technique, not brute energy, but deep-rooted mastery. Inspired by Shuri, he lifted up his sword again, newly awakened. No longer reliant on arm power itself, he now moved with full body awareness. Energy surged from each joint, legs, hips, body, all flowing into the blade, despite no interruption. Bones, muscles, nutrition. He vowed to master all of it, turning his entire physique into one unified, controlled weapon. Under the forest canopy, the swordsman faced a glowing copy of himself in a mirrored training session. Blades clashed in rapid succession. Every strike caused recollections his opponent moved like his previous. A quick force tore by his grip. The blade flew from his hand ahead of he could recover. Pain surged by his arm. He studied his hand, shocked at how readily his energy did not. Embedded deep in a tree, the sword showed its might, cleaving another than halfway by solid wood, despite no patience. After breaking by his mental barrier, he understood it had never been his limit, just reluctance. Fueled by the breakthrough, he trained harder than ever. His sword slicing by room under moonlight. By morning, exhaustion took hold in, but Shuri scolded him fiercely, worry hidden back frustration. Regardless of the composed face, Shuri's quiet anger was unnerving. It showed how deeply he cared. A grateful nod was shared ahead of chaos approached as an enemy force charged around the horizon. News of an advancing enemy dispatched the encampment into action, fighters rushing to make explosive stones. Despite no reluctance, the captain sprinted ahead, disregarding the protests of those calling the act reckless. Arrows rained lower as he charged, sword drawn using a line of archers with unwavering purpose. In that instant he wielded the gentle sword, an artful defense carved from awakened skill. When the cavalry approached, he changed to his fresh style, the raw, unfiltered power he'd mastered until now. With precision and energy, he unleashed the strong sword, cleaving by armored foes in a one action. Mastery around his physique granted motion and nutrition, enhancing each attack more than what he when consideration possible. During the chaos, he moved like a force of nature, his technique stunning allies observing from afar. Later, the encampment erupted in celebration, honoring his leadership and the hard-fought victory. Those who when doubted him bowed in apology, now completely recognizing their captain's energy and purpose, following their heartfelt apology. The fighters humbly questioned to be trained in his swordsmanship. With a slight grin, he considered the request mentoring that might not be such a poor plan. As kingdoms endured, military energy continued vital to safeguard what had been built. Within the countless martial techniques, merely Kuga style continued. Born from a hero's mastery, its fearsome power when shifted battlefields into graveyards, a testament to its devastating effectiveness. Legend spoke of the Blood Garden, its crimson soil tied to Kuga Yanagi's feared massacre, though its reality remains hesitant. Regardless of his title as Supreme Commander, he fought beside his fighters, lifting their spirits by sheer appearance. He, when believed merely ruin, went him, haunted by the cost of his battles. But a companion's speech showed a second reality: countless lives remained because of him. For them, he vowed to always lead from the front, becoming the shield they required. Around years, his deadly blade was reimagined, a life-giving sword that protected, varied by cutting lower, merely what was necessary by legend. He became immortalized in plays and tales, hailed as the revered sword god. In retirement, he discovered peace beside tranquil waters, fishing with friends and kings alike. During those silent chances, he always enjoyed fried horse mackerel. Uniform in old years, joy never left him, his grin wide as he dined within comrades. A fierce fight breaks out as chaos spreads around the battlefield, with fighters clashing in a violent frenzy. In the midst of the uncertainty, Shuri receives orders to retreat along with the one another non-combatants. Quickly, the mage unit appears, their appearance radiating training and composed during the turmoil. They unleash powerful magic, engulfing the enemy lines in roaring flames that leave Shuri amazed. Latter, snow blankets, the land as Shuri reflects on the Mercenary Corps' state, determined to keep working ahead. With the Salt conflict decided, the Mercenary Corps earned generous rewards and vital provisions. Regardless of the victory, Shuri discovered no one qualified could assist with his cookery, abandoning the job unfilled. The commander admitted Shuri's unique methods were difficult to replicate, using internal reluctance. Though the seasons shifted bitter, conflict reignited in a frostbitten land rich in minerals. Braving the cold, Shuri endured the chill, carrying on with his duties beside Lil. Lil remained frozen solid from the cold, abandoning Shuri surprised and rushing to help. Swiftly, he offered her a warm drink, amazak, to thaw her out. She tasted it, surprised by its sweetness, unaware of its light alcoholic content. Away, a second woman savored a similar brew, recalling how difficult it was to acquire. Although alcohol was risky for fighters, Shuri readied just enough to warm all people gently. Teg-san approached hungrily, drawn by the scent of amazak as Shuri and Lil enjoyed their drinks. Presented as the archery unit's cheerful captain, Teg-san agreed to a cup with a bright grin. He sipped and commended the drink's pleasure and smooth taste with heartfelt delight. Wishing for another, he reluctantly promised to limit himself to one cup after Shuri's reminder. Quickly, Lil requested a hamburger, brushing guard reason with her usual odd reason. Lil enthusiastically declared her love for hamburgers, her energy surging after the amazake concerned. Shuri and Teg-san shared glances, unsure if she was acting usual anymore. Away, Gungrave enjoyed his amazake non-alcoholic version rendered specially for him. Obtaining the rice koji had been a difficult task, given its rarity and use. While Gungrave strategized with his captains, Shuri overheard a talk about their snowy disadvantage. One of the mage captains silently shifted her gaze toward Shuri's direction, observing him silently. Shuri realized Tegsan's absence from the officer meeting and caused it up casually. Tegsan, unfazed, admitted strategic talks weren't his energy and preferred abandoning it to Gungrave. Both he and Lil nonchalantly promised, abandoning Shuri, feeling sympathy for their hard-working commander. As the meeting landed, the sequence to recover was given and Shuri resumed meal duty, shivering. While scrubbing dishes in the cold, Shuri was approached by the stoic mage captain, Arius. He recognized her suddenly, the respected commander of the powerful mage corps. Her magic, unlike Lil's engineering style, was pure natural manipulation, elegant and forceful. Shuri recalled witnessing her unleash a devastating fireball, abandoning a trail of scorched enemies. Regardless of her energy, her beauty remained out of figure, dazzling enough for stardom on Earth. Regardless of her graceful aura, Arius's figure draws blunt commentary, her chest being notably flat. Uniform Shuri, surprised guard, silently wonders if she's directing her pointed remarks at him. He reflects on their chilly interactions, convinced she harbors some dislike towards him. While he's grown near with her subordinates, Arius has continued foreign and stern. Each glance from her feels sharp, her gaze often bordering on a glare. Yet perceived as a foreigner, Shuri was approached by Arius, her tone unusually serious. To his amazement, she glanced uncharacteristically shy, nervously fidgeting with her fingers. Confused by her awkward demeanor, Shuri wondered what was going on. With quick resolve, Arius questioned him to teach her how to cook. Though surprised guard, Shuri suspected there was another back her request than she let on. Arius harbors secret feelings for Gungrave, her composed demeanor concealing a silent affection. Though her subtle grin speaks volumes, merely the observant recognize her real emotions. Within the soldiers, it's an open secret one met with quiet aid. Gungrave remains clueless, missing each obvious sign she gives guard. When asked about cookery, she admits she has no background, but resolve burns in her gazes. Shuri said that cookery took years, but Arius seemed uneasy, concealing anything. She questioned him to keep her request secret, showing few vulnerability. With a flustered blush, she confessed her love for Gungrave, a reality Shuri immediately understood. She admitted her jealousy seeing Gungrave enjoy Shuri's meals, wanting to reach his heart too. Shuri's imagination spiraled into absurd territory, hilariously misinterpreting the condition in dramatic fashion. Arius shyly admitted her wish to cook stemmed from wanting Gungrave to notice her another. She confessed feeling powerless, unable to aid him regardless of being by his side. Shuri started to grasp beneath her cold exterior, was a person deeply thoughtful and kind. Her earnestness rendered Shuri reflect on his former logic of point and encampment. Arius declared her battlefield was the cookhouse, just as his was the front lines. Shuri gently reminded Arius that supporting Gungrave didn't require abandoning her strengths. He recognized her incredible talent in magic, a power that brought their battlefield victories. Curious, he questioned what would push a person so capable to pursue cookery instead. Arius showed she had fallen into a slump, unsure how to move ahead. Regardless of her efforts, her progress had stalled. Abandoning her feeling she'd arrived at her limit, Arius expressed her wish to contribute to Gungrave in her former way by learning to cook. Shuri comprehended she sought to grow, but was burdened by self-doubt around her abilities. He said that cookery takes years and the results wouldn't come swiftly. Yet he gave help in matters of love, catching her entirely guard. When questioned if she'd ever eaten itself with Gungrave, Arius awkwardly admitted she hadn't. Shuri suggested a private dinner for Arius and Gungrave, one that could strengthen their bond. Excited, Arius lit up at the plan of a meal that could deepen their connection. Although surprised Shuri would attend too, she reluctantly agreed to his background job. Gungrave arrived, puzzled but curious about the unexpected dinner invitation. Shuri welcomed them with assurance, putting the stage for a heartfelt, slowly planned dish. A dining space was arranged with care, complete with chairs and a heated pot at the center. The broth simmered gently, stepping into view. The cook ready to demonstrate his skill as curious spectators assembled. Intrigued by the setup, tofu was placed slowly into the broth, while one guest cast a suspicious glance, misreading the mood. Steam erupted as the tofu gradually heated by, turning soft and flavorful. High-quality kelp purchased earlier stated the meal its rich depth. Fresh tofu rested on a plate created by lengthy hours of extracting nigari from soybeans. Applying traditional utensils, he crafted the coagulant by boiling seawater collected during a coastal visit. Multiple attempts went, every requiring precision and temperature, a work gripped with errors and learning. Lil's help were vital, though her assistance arrived at the cost of countless hamburger steaks. Though plain, the tofu meal aligned with the meal's theme. ready to adapt with place supplies. A steaming pot sat ahead of them, radiating pleasure perfect for the cold. The tofu within promised lasting flame. With the cookery complete, the young cook moved again, abandoning the last task to the companions. As the ladle was elapsed, he said that the joy of hot pot arrived from sharing it within companions. Touched by his speech, she gave to serve Gungrave with a grin. Slowly, she added the soup and tofu into a dish, presenting it with quiet pride. Surprised by his provide, she hesitated ahead of agreeing, and the two shared shy smiles around the steaming pot. The pleasure of the instant reflected in their faces, just as intended by the young cook observing local. Only mouthful in. Gungrave yelped. The tofu's flame surprised him guard regardless of the warning. He swiftly understood the depth of taste and consistency, amazed by the simplicity. From the background, the cook watched their reaction, satisfied the meal caused comfort and connection. With a grin, the cook sprinkled the spices onto the tofu, calling it a magical accent to enhance the taste. Gungrave tasted it, saying the chili's pleasure following the tanginess, pleasantly surprised by the effect. Additional toppings, grated daikon and green vegetables, were placed local, ready for customization. She tried the mix initial, praising the spice and crunch, prompting him to do the same. Exchanging glances, they proceeded spices their bowls together, enjoying the shared background laughter, went back to their people, the tension that when remained now melting away between Aureus and Gungrave. Seizing the instant, the cook posed a thoughtful question to shift their attention. What if the hot pot had no kelp? Gungrave hesitated, then guessed it wouldn't matter, but was met with gentle correction. Kelp, he said, mixed umami into the broth, enhancing the tofu's taste. Like kelp, subtle bonds caused out pleasure they hadn't realized ahead of. Aureus and Gungrave remained side by side, realizing how people like supplies shape one another's depth. The cook's speech pierced gently, guiding Gungrave to recognize who always remained beside him. With flushed cheeks, Aureus confirmed his silent guess. The cook smiled, stepping away silently. Outside, he reflected proudly on his matchmaking victory, though his former romantic fortunes yet lagged. Ahead, if he could sulk too long. The recover of the crew appeared, around him with amazement. The assembled troop watched with grins, plainly enjoying the unfolding scene another than anticipated. Though some voiced worry, their interest and affection kept them from moving away. Lil stayed nonchalant, while Kuga protested, insisting his appearance was out of moral duty. Experience remarks went back to lightheartedly, exposed the reality all people wished to witness this instant. In the end, it wasn't just entertainment, it was a heartfelt union shared by those who cared. Smiling, the cook excused himself, abandoning the recover to the companions who promised not to interrupt. Itself in the snow, he whispered greetings to the cold morning, care trembling from the chill. Aureus approached, glowing with fresh assurance, stunning him with her appearance. She shared how she'd finally confessed, crediting him with their newfound happiness. His joy shifted to amazement, realizing just how well things had progressed between them overnight. Aureus shared their vow to marry when they discovered a land to call house. Their hearts immediately committed. Shuri, strained, attempted to compose his mind with a dramatic self-punch. When questioned, he stated it was to purify his impure heart, receiving her gratitude and go back. They proceeded moving, confirming that the future held marriage when they became clear. Though it wouldn't be simple, he believed they'd succeed just as they had come together. He used to scoff at romance, but seeing near friends happy changed that feeling. After chatting with Aureus, he stated how Yudofu mixed, unsure why she asked. Later their side convinced the fight firmly thanks to Aureus. Rumors exaggerated her power, claiming she unleashed a blazing sun on the field. Gungrave fallen with a grave wound, his comrades rushing to his side in terror, desperate to save him. After regaining consciousness, he questioned about the companions, relieved to hear they'd all rendered it out alive. Regardless of the pain, he smiled, grateful they escaped safely. Recollections of their severe experience resurfaced, orphans fighting to live, brought by the one they trusted most. Now she vowed to walk beside him, to share the weight he carried itself. Her feelings became plain when he almost died after their mercenary troop had just formed. During a disastrous rear-guard retreat, countless allies plunged, and their commander was left critically injured. As he lay between path and ruin, regret and guilt consumed those who survived. Regardless of the pain, he remained again, offering merely gratitude for their living. In that grin, she finally comprehended her heart belonged to him entirely. Aureus presented herself as the mage unit commander of the Gungrave Mercenary Corps, a few and powerful commander. Magic formed the battlefield, flames rained, ice shielded allies, and wind sliced by enemies. With control around mana, mages could reshape matter itself, wielding terrifying energy. But within the gifted, most could merely manipulate objects, their potential scarce. Merely a handful could become real mages. Her unit gripped 4 of those exceptional few. Their elite mage squad ensured victory, but serious pay demands maintained their numbers little, though Aureus persuaded them to serve for less. It stirred varied complaints. Recently, discontent faded thanks to Shuri, the humble cook of the corps. His meals not merely delighted them but enhanced their health and magical precision. With no reason to dine away, they viewed Shuri's cookery as a worthy trade for lower wages. Aureus silently recognized that despite no Shuri, her squad might have fallen long ago. As the next fight approached in snowy terrain, the encampment braced for severe conditions. She entered the tent, surprised to find her unit casually dining mid-preparation. Outraged by what she consideration was alcohol, she scolded them for being unready. To her ease, it was merely Shuri's amazak, mild, warm, and shared around the encampment. The squad commended Shuri's drink for its pleasure and impressing health benefits, smiling together. They promised his creation sensed like magic, beauty, and wellness in one. Learning their praise, Aureus understood how much Shuri had transformed their spirits. Where arguments went flared, maturity now directed their responses uniform towards training. Around the core, Shuri's influence sparked innovation, attention, and unity, silently reshaping the entire mercenary force. Aureus tasted Shuri's drink and, regardless of its pleasure, felt isolated as companions grew closer. Near encampment, laughter landed uniform if some missed stronger booze. The spirits continued serious. Though thankful, a part of her couldn't help but envy Shuri's rising influence. He had appeared quickly, earning faith while left over an enigma to all. Haunted by jealousy, she feared her cold gaze might push Shuri away completely. Aureus realized Gungrave sipping anything and rushed around, gazes wide with worry, fearing he'd consumed true alcohol. She reminded him of the danger during continuing negotiations. To her amazement, he said his drink was a separate kind of amazak. Shuri had crafted a version despite no alcohol to match the flavor, but keep them clear-headed. Gungrave smiled warmly, handing her a cup, one rendered especially for her. Aureus sipped the sweet drink, feeling its pleasure landed from within, soothing but light. All near her, the companions drank happily, but a quiet frustration built within her. She noticed how deeply Gungrave trusted Shuri, uniform in fight. A bond she lacked. That faith wasn't just companionship. It was a shared path, an unspoken reliance. Observing from afar, she couldn't help but envy the one who remained beside the man she loved. Aureus sighed, restless and hesitant, longing to be closer to Gungrave. As the consideration remained, understanding came. Her gazes expanded with resolve. If she could learn to cook, perhaps she'd finally feel helpful to him too. Picturing his praise rendered her heart flutter. Just being required caused joy. With magic at a standstill, she saw a fresh path ahead, energy by pleasure, effort, and heart. Determined to work amends, Aureus ran by encampment, ready to ask Shuri for instruction. She spotted him at the river, silently scrubbing dishes in the bitter cold. Meanwhile, Gungrave announced a full morning of recover ahead of the next march. Companions went the sequence, preserving energy and remaining warm indoors. To safeguard the companions, Shuri silently took on the severe task itself, despite no complaint. Aureus silently watched Shuri, his care raw and cracked from non-stop serve in the cold. Regardless of the rising number of troops, he continued their sole cook, contributing how he could. Companions realized the toll it took, his exhaustion mounting with every passing morning. Aureus reflected bitterly, ashamed she had merely judged and indulged while he stated his all. Resolved to transition, she clenched her fists this year's. She'd speak with courage. Aureus approached Shuri, voice soft, finally ready to speak truthfully. With closed gazes, she vowed to apologize in faith, the one who always mixed silently back the scenes. When she expressed her wish to learn cookery for Gungrave, his kind provide surprised her. He reminded her each individual has their battlefield, and energy lies in where one really shines. His sincerity touched her deeply, cutting by her uncertainty and warming her heart. Aureus finally noticed that Shuri's kindness had always been there. She just hadn't realized ahead of when she tried to confess her feelings for Gungrave. His knowing gaze left her speechless, treeing with her concern. She opened up about her slump and insecurity. Regardless of intense training, her magic faltered, an alarm of plunging back grew heavier. Though he couldn't help with magic, Shuri smiled, offering help in matters of the heart. Shuri suggested a private dinner, just Aureus and Gungrave, a few opportunity to align. Gungrave had always dined in groups, never sharing a dish itself with anyone ahead of. Shuri, with silent thoughtfulness, arranged his fate to aid her feelings. Around steaming udofu, Aureus felt pleasure landed by her care, her heart, and the unspoken bond between them. What really elevated the instant was the sauce, fragrant, tangy, and unforgettable, like the evening itself. The sauce soaked deep into the tofu, enhancing each mouthful with sweetness and depth. With toppings like chili and daikon, every flavor showed fresh richness and subtle complexity. Orius discovered pleasure in the dish and in how naturally their discussion flowed. Together, they laughed, forgetting conflict, savoring a few instants of peace and happiness. Moved by the scene, Shori smiled. His gentle push had aided her feelings finally reached Gungrave. Orius remained amazed as she finally confessed her long-held feelings. He hadn't anticipated such honesty. Moved by her courage, he gently gripped her care and responded with the reality buried in his heart. Tears of joy welled in her gazes. Happiness overflowed from the connection they now shared. Regardless of his love, Orius hesitated. The path ahead gripped doubt he couldn't ignore. His voice trembled, peril hung constantly. Loving her now signified risking her pain. She shifted away in pain, but he arrived at out, urging her to hear him. With strict purpose, he showed his ambition, one formed by a mentor's lasting speech. They when remained together, dreaming of a nation free from hunger and despair. Declaring his point, he vowed to live until that dream accepted shape. With hopeful gazes, he questioned her to wait until he could propose as a king. Tears shimmered as she softly named him a coward for concealing back dreams. Yet, she questioned if he could really be believed, her voice trembling. With a vow sealed by a kiss, he promised to be worthy of her. Their private instant was shattered by amazement. Shouts from friends gripped the space. Laughter echoed near them as all people celebrated the long-awaited love finally understood. Warm congratulations added in as friends celebrated the unexpected confession, surprised by how long they'd been observing. The couple remained frozen in awkwardness. She hid her features, cheeks burning, while laughter echoed from all near. Regardless of the teasing, joy gripped the room. It was the instant. None would forget, grateful and proud. She sensed complete beside Gungrave, ready for whatever arrived next. She thanked Shuri, sharing that her heart had finally connected with Gungrave's. In response, Shuri started hitting himself, much to her amazement and uncertainty. Their talk changed to Shuri's upbringing, showing a background rich in understanding. Curious, she questioned about unseen elements, intrigued by the concept of tiny particles. With ease, Shuri said fire's components, teaching her science by pleasure and question. Invisible particles form the foundation of the entire realm, unseen but vital. By magic, mages control those particles, changing the world itself. For her, his fate, when hesitant, had become startlingly plain in that instant. Shuri's scientific understanding sensed deeper than magic, closer to the reality of existence, but mystery clung to him. A silent question remained in her heart: who was he? Really, she selected not to question him further, recognizing Shuri as both ally and savior. Well away, a snowstorm descended as the mercenary band readied for fight. Outnumbered and using foes matched for the cold, Gungrave moved ahead with purpose. Causing on Shuri's teachings, she channeled her magic to interact with the world's very ranks. With fire born of reason and sorcery, she unleashed a force that amazed friend and foe alike. The enemy looked in doubt. What blazed ahead of them seemed another like a sun than magic. Uniform allies were awestruck, praising the sheer scale of the fireball and Captain Orius's power. To live the blaze, the soldiers swiftly conjured a barrier of room, strained by flame. Their opponents panicked as the snow beneath them vanished. With the terrain now uniform, she shifted to Gungrave, ready to claim victory together. With the signal given, the soldiers surged ahead in a unified control. Their overwhelming power, combined with her refined magic, shifted the fight entirely. One-sided. Latter, the companions assembled near, amazed by the transformation in her abilities. Smiling knowingly, she showed her secret. It all started with tofu, and the truths it brought to. Lengthy ago, such mastery would have crowned her within the legendary mages of former. Legends spoke of one woman who erupted to the highest rank within all mages. Her identity was Orius Apurata, the witch of reality, unmatched in power and appearance beside Gungrave. She ruled as queen, recalled another for her wisdom than conflict. As founder of the National Academy for Mages, her vision formed generations to come. Thanks to her, Mage became the identity of honor, born from reality and legacy. Admired for her beauty, Orius left countless admirers speechless in her appearance, but her heart belonged only to Gungrave, the merely man she ever really loved. Her wisdom continued unmatched. No one since had arrived at the depth of her knowledge. She, when hinted that a humble meal contained the secret to profound reality. That plain dish of kelp and tofu became a symbol of understanding in her kingdom. She dined tofu often, believing it carried reality, smiling with each warm, truthful spoonful. The Gungrave Mercenary Corps traveled south, after claiming victory in the northern snowy plains. Wary of unsettling rumors ahead, within the carriage, Akari sat light and sweaty, causing worry from a local knight. Regardless of attempts to recover, the bumpy ride worsened his requirement, and companions started to notice. Quickly, a sharp jolt surprised all people as Akari held his mouth, holding again nausea. Trying to endure, he muttered an apology, blaming the carriage's brutal lack of comfort. The knight advised Shuri to study on horseback to ease his action sickness, pointing out the benefits of training. However, Shuri stated the issue wasn't him, horses simply didn't tolerate him. Regardless of his requirement, Shuri's unshaken composed earned a teasing remark from the knight. Turning to Lil, Shuri questioned about her riding abilities, merely to realize her legs couldn't reach the stirrups. Unbothered, Lil sat confidently. Her limbs became by tattoos, engrossed in mysterious experiments she'd been pursuing lately. Shuri gazed at Lil's runes, asking if changing such flawless skin was really necessary, regardless of knowledge their point. Chances later, his vision blurred. Terror spread by the troop as his physique quickly stated out. Alarm landed swiftly, with the soldiers rushing to grasp what had happened within the carriage. Set flat and weak, Shuri could hardly speak, strained by chills and a burning fever. He later stated the cold stemmed from exhaustion and the abrupt climate shift during their lengthy journey. Uniform while bedridden, Shuri uneasy about the companion's meals, though he was gently told to recover. Confined to a makeshift tent, he received care from Miss Kaguya, while Gungrave stayed by his side. Her treatment combined Eastern methods like moxibustion and acupuncture, grounded in traditional understanding instead than magic. Whispers claimed she when carried out covert missions as a doctor in enemy lands. After confirming it was a cold, Kaguya warned them to remain cautious due to scarce supplies. Ahead of abandoning the tent, Kaguya warned Shuri to be extremely precise, her serious face remaining in the room. Left itself, he reflected bitterly on his bad requirement, blaming himself for causing trouble regardless of his job. Local Gungrave admitted regret around neglecting provisions, feeling responsible for Shuri's illness. Shuri rejected the blame, insisting the fault lay in his former neglect. Though dependent on companions now, he silently sensed comforted by being needed and supported. Lying weakly in cot, Shuri uneasy another about the companions eating properly than his former requirement. Gungrave reassured him by composed appearance, focusing everyone's hopes on Shuri's calm recovery. Worry remained as the lack of proper medicine became plain, abandoning merely emergency care present. Regardless of illness, Shuri clung to his purpose, determined not to fall so readily in this realm. Seeing the worry near him, Gungrave trusted Shuri would recover. Supported by everyone's silent care, the mercenary companions assembled outside, united by worry, having all come together because of Shuri's importance. Within the tent, Shuri smiled weakly, exhausted but grateful, ahead of being told to recover despite no worry. Left itself, he realized his cookery utensils and supplies slowly arranged local, stirring quiet purpose. Deciding to act, Shuri gradually erupted and started readying a plain dish regardless of his remaining weakness. Applying eggs, sake, honey, and water. He focused on precise steps, hoping health would aid recovery. With unsteady care, Shuri slowly strained the warm blend, finishing the plain egg sake he relied on. Unable to flavor much, he drank it gradually, focusing merely on assuming enough nutrients to recover. As pleasure landed, recollections returned of similar meals ready during youth illnesses again house. Lying itself afterward, he felt the absence of known voices that when checked on him, in this realm, despite no household or doctors, he silently agreed to solitude while pushing himself ahead. Feverish in itself, Shuri lay staring upward, strained by mind swirling by his weakened thoughts. Recollections of regular path in this realm returned, along with the alarm that years might pass differently than on Earth. Asking out instinctively, he questioned whether coming back house was uniform possible. In his tentative state, longing for his parents slipped out, speech formed by vulnerability, as night became clear around the encampment. Exhaustion finally claimed him, and sleep silently went. Shuri awoke to shadow, realizing he had slept longer than anticipated. But his physique felt noticeably lighter. Energy gradually went back as he remained, crediting the warm drink or Kaguya's treatment for the transition. A quick chill forced him outside in a hurry, breath trembling as he steadied himself in the cold night room. Quiet wrapped the encampment, shelters resting silently as he realized all people was immediately asleep. Turning a corner, Shuri froze when a known guard spotted him, amazement cutting by the composed after dark at night. Shuri was discovered near the shelters, prompting quiet worry from a watchful mercenary. Though surprised by the encounter, he reasoned it was too after dark for visitors and brushed guard the condition. The guard admitted remaining worry, having realized Shuri awake regardless of his earlier requirement. Downplaying it, Shuri blamed little another than a remaining cold and fatigue. Yet, companions believed illness could become risky there, explaining why his well-being drew such precise focus. Shuri apologized for causing worry, explaining he had recovered enough to walk and didn't mean to trouble anyone. Believing he could go back to serve before long, he spoke lightly, unaware his speech carried the foreign weight. The guard responded strongly, interpreting Shuri's visit as reckless devotion instead than plain comfort. Despite no patience left, he firmly directed Shuri again to cot, closing the talk. After calming lower, the guard explained his frustration arrived from worry, abandoning Shuri silently reflective. Lying silently, Shuri listened as the guard admitted the troop had relied on him well, another than they understood, gesturing outside. He told Shuri to notice how varied people cared and remain back him. Sitting up, Shuri confessed his wish to go back house and see his household again. Uncertainty went at once, as he admitted the path again might not exist. Pressed further, Shuri hesitated, assessing whether concealing that reality forever was really right. The guard reminded Shuri that a house and household were yet waiting for him somewhere more than this location. Reflecting silently, he said that varied in the mercenary troop had grown up, despite no parents of their former. Surprised guard, Shuri understood his speech had been careless, especially spoken in front of them. The troop was recalled not by blood, but by bonds formed by shared youth and living. Thou coming back house continued hesitant. They rejected sympathy, valuing the household they had immediately built. The guard paused, realizing the plan of crossing the sea was anything he had never really considered ahead of. Beside him, Shuri hesitated, trying with how after dark it felt to clarify his homeland and feelings. Concerned but gentle, the guard questioned about Shuri's household, ensuring he was calm enough to reflect. Listening carefully, he admitted interest about what having a true household was like. Assuming a breath, Shuri finally selected to share his story, putting away his concern. Shuri described plain chances at house, where meals and play landed with a quiet welcome that later became precious. Living itself taught him how deeply his parents' care had supported him, uniform during chances of rebellion. Speaking those recollections aloud reinforced his longing for household and the realm he left back. Looking around the encampment, he questioned what this location really signified to him now. After weeks beside fight and living, he carried both loss and gratitude within him. Recollections flooded again of shared meals, celebrations after victories, and quiet comfort during losses, all woven into everyday path. Strained by those chances, Shuri's emotions returned unexpectedly, tears slipping free ahead of he could stop them. Swiftly wiping his features, he tried to dismiss it, insisting little was foreign regardless of his shaking breath. Worry grew as the guard admitted a person as kind as Shuri didn't stay in a brutal location like this. Lifting his head, Shuri forced again gently, realizing his feelings were another complicated than plain longing. Moving itself more than the encampment, Shuri reflected that remaining had never been about indecision or alarm tears. Welled as he finally comprehended this location had silently become an irreplaceable house. Encircled by known people, he felt true comfort remaining within all people who agreed to him. Grateful for their kindness, Shuri resolved not to leave despite no granting anything again. Lifting his head with a grin, he questioned to stay, choosing to keep working beside them. Shuri bowed deeply, expressing his wish to remain, while the guard maintained such speech deserved to be shared openly. Approval went with pleasure, the guard affirming Shuri as a trusted comrade they would safeguard together. Noticing his brighter face, the guard pointed out how much healthier Shuri immediately glanced. Feeling lighter, Shuri suggested readying a late-night dish and invited him to join. Touched by the provide, the guard understood the meal carried recollections, signified to be shared. Within the leftover provisions, Shuri readied homemade consomme face stock refined by constant test and precise adjustment. Dried produce were ground into powder, mixed with spices to deepen taste, despite no relying on few supplies. Water, salt, pepper, cabbage, carrots, potatoes, vegetables, and sausages were assembled for a satisfying encampment dish. Every vegetable was sliced with intention, keeping sizes uniform to keep calm cookery. Small cuts in the sausages allowed spices to seep in, finishing the precise work. Water and consomme simmered together as Shuri placed produce in stages, letting his fate soften gradually around low flame. When emptied, the pot, au feu, appeared complete, seasoned simply to preserve the supply's natural flavors. Invited to eat, the guard inhaled deeply, smiling as the warm aroma gripped his awareness. Every mouthful showed a gentle nutrition, the broth carrying depth despite no heaviness. Noticing the tender potatoes, the guard felt reassured by a known comfort Shuri's cookery always caused. Near the table, plain supplies gripped the plates, potatoes piled serious from a crop all people knew too well. Observing the responses carefully, Shuri realized ease landed as known flavors exceeded quiet expectations. Juices from the sausages mixed into the broth, causing true amazement and rising pleasure. Warm aromas remained, gentle but rich, wrapping the instant in composed contentment. Seeing the meal enjoyed, Shuri felt reassured that his cookery yet arrived at people's hearts. Shuri tasted the soup silently, admitting he yet hadn't completely arrived at the taste he recalled from house. He showed the meal arrived from his household, readied when pleasure and comfort were needed most. Choosing to remain with the troop, Shuri confessed that loneliness yet remained regardless of his choice. The mercenary said their bond, forged despite no parents, built by shared living and faith, Encircled by smiling people, Shuri finally comprehended he belonged within this chosen household. The mercenary spoke firmly, calling them a household bound by shared fate and urging Shuri to rely on them when lonely. Learning that, Shuri froze, realizing how fortunate he had been since arriving there. Strained, tears plunged as he recognized being agreed to. As a comrade, regardless of his short years with them, the promise arrived plainly. This location would always be where Shuri could go back and be protected. Crying softly, he believed their energy grew from his cookery and their shared faith. The mercenary thanked Shuri sincerely, calling the dish warm, comforting, and anything parents might have rendered. That night, Shuri understood anything precious had changed, gaining friends who treated him as household. Morning came with shouts as Shuri went back, greeted by ease and open smiles, apologies and gratitude mixed together, proving how deeply all people rested on him. Encircled by noise and pleasure, Shuri agreed to that this location finally felt like house looking again. Shuri understood his purpose had immediately formed long ago. Uniform if he lacked the courage to accept it then. Using the sky, he silently recognized he would never go back to his parents' side. Carrying provisions with the companions, he embraced a fresh point born from shared effort and faith. Choosing this realm, Shuri wished all people well, assuring them he lived there despite no regret. Grateful for knowledge and pleasure, he thanked the one who believed in him from the beginning. After recovering, Shuri trained seriously with the corps, rising powerful in physique and kindness within. Akari approached the mercenary captain during a forest stop, seeking simple instruction with a bow. The request was dismissed, and the captain departed, abandoning Akari hesitant as the troop moved. Later, Akari called the assembled soldiers, admitting he merely wished to live by being helpful. Observing the captain fight, Akari realized a plain style that relied on routine and aid. Marching onward, Akari agreed to the band's easygoing rhythm and selected to follow its natural flow. Teg presented himself confidently as the archer unit's captain, presenting an easygoing attitude regardless of his rank. Training showed how he relied on instinct and natural talent, valuing simplicity as a core combat energy. Recollections later returned of a did-not mission where a crucial choice left a deep mark on him. Uncertainty landed when the cavalry vanished, accusations growing as strain closed in. The reality came quickly, showing the captain's fall and abandoning Teg frozen in regret. After a crushing defeat, the troops started a retreat, terror spreading when Gungrave was missing. During that fight, Gungrave guarded the rear itself, suffering severe wounds as the cavalry held circumstances. Lacking orders, Tig fled with the companions, choosing instinct around burden as events unraveled. Although Gungrave survived by care and sacrifice, the incident reshaped the band's reputation. Remaining around the injured, Teg resolved never to abandon duty again. The mercenary band remained united, resolved to safeguard one a second as a chosen household. Regardless of camaraderie, Teg reflected on an unfulfilled oath and habits of drifting, despite no strict command during long marches and quiet nights itself. Before long, Gungrave caused in Shuri Azuma, a frail-looking man whose skill lay more than fight. Meals transformed encampment path, as Shuri's cookery lifted spirits and bonded the unit. After victories, shared bowls affirmed living, reminding Teg why protecting companions mattered. Shuri's cheerful appearance earned faith, though Teg sensed a quiet frustration beneath the smiles. Regardless of concern, the meals reinforced all people, lifting spirits and binding the troop ahead of every march. Battles changed as comrades fought harder, plainly changed after eating Shuri's cookery. Recognition landed, and the band started to see the cook as a real comrade. Quickly, Shuri fallen from exhaustion, halting the pleasure he had created within the encampment that night, abandoning amazed and quiet. Quick chaos erupted as Shuri fallen near the wagons, compelling the unit to halt and reorganize. Rushed preparations went, with Shuri carried within while anxious people assembled near him. Weak apologies slipped from Shuri, as Teg remained frozen, amazement gradually turning into clarity. Reflection showed how stamina, not frailty, had forced Shuri more than his constraints during their marches. At last, Teg comprehended their dependence, recognizing Shuri's silent purpose and unspoken kindness. Teg watched around the tent as Shuri lay unconscious, the troop waiting in uneasy quiet. Within, Kaguya confirmed the cause as a plain cold. Reducing some present alarm, talk showed how illness turns risky when treatment is delayed by poverty. That reality pressed strongly on Teg, who confronted constraints more than energy or courage. Comfort went as Shuri stabilized, abandoning Teg resolved to safeguard him better next years. Guilt returned as burden became clear in, and the weight of neglect became impossible to ignore. Quiet went while Teague sat itself, recollections of Shuri's calm kindness replaying in his thoughts. Earlier smiles and shared serve showed how naturally Shuri had supported all people near him. Mind drifted towards household and origins, exposing truths that had been overlooked for too long. Knowledge finally formed when Isekai'd understood Shuri carried his former burdens, while striving to reunite with those he loved. Shuri mixed silently within the shelters, unaware of how lonely and anxious his days had really been. Doubts remained as he served meals, showing how little anyone comprehended his worries or experience. Sitting itself, Isekai'd admitted that no one had ever taken the years to ask. Reflection went, exposing seasons spent drifting, despite no assuming true burden. Duty resumed when comrades came with meals, grounding Isekai'd. The unit proceeded ahead together. The squad shared a crude dish, and Isekai'd tasted guilt mixed with worry for its cause. Seeing his companions, he understood effort mattered another than taste or pride. Study from Kaguya sharpened the instant, pointing out strain instead than failure. A hand arrived at a head, reminding Isekai'd that shared pain bound the unit together. Approval went as he comprehended all people suffered, and helping Shuri was a collective burden. Isekai'd admitted his shortcomings, realizing that avoiding effort had merely grew the problem. Strict speech sliced by his mind, compelling him to see that bearing his fate itself helped no one. Focus changed to the present, where caring for Shuri mattered, another than regret. Purpose landed by the troop as burden was shared despite no reluctance. Approval became clear and Isekai'd answered with quiet resolve, ready to act alongside all people else. Reflection proceeded within the troop, as burden was no longer placed on one individual itself. Worry changed towards Shuri's health, and the choice was rendered to let him recover despite no strain. Night became clear around the encampment, where Shuri slept peacefully under watchful care. Cold room crept in regardless of the warmer region, reminding all people of remaining dangers, choosing care. Isekai'd started a quiet patrol, determined to safeguard both the encampment and Shuri's recovery. Morning terror landed when Shuri's cot was discovered cleared, the tent quickly feeling too quiet. Alarmed, Isekai'd rushed by the encampment, fearing Shuri had wandered guard itself. Ease came when Isekai'd spotted Shuri outside, remaining calmly under the trees. Closer inspection showed Shuri looking steadier, as if the recover had aided. Tension eased for Isekai'd, though anxiety remained beneath his ease as fresh mind took shape. Shuri appeared cheerful and claimed recovery, reducing worry while concealing remaining strain beneath his grin. Before long, his actions showed eagerness as he hurried ahead, immediately pushing himself towards serve again. That conduct unsettled Isekai'd, who felt distance instead of faith rising between them. Within the tent, disordered utensils showed how strain and expectation had pressed strongly on Shuri. Regret went as Isekai'd apologized, finally resolving to aid Shuri more than plain gratitude. Isekai'd sat beside Shuri and decided to feature the reality directly, listening despite no turning away. Shuri's wish to go back house returned, mixed with doubt and constraints more than his control. Shame moved as Isekai'd grasped how little he comprehended Shuri's origins. The account traced again to foreign lands formed by gods and chaos. That ancient history showed barriers yet remaining, silently shaping Shuri's fate. Ancient seas were said to be formed into violent barriers, gripped with creatures signified to block human passage. Around years, the tale became a myth, half believed and half dismissed around the continent. Yet, the Outer Ring Sea continued true, its dangers confirmed by monsters and endless storms. Attempts to cross never landed and go back, showing Shuri's path house effectively closed. As the reality became clear, Isekai'd realized Shuri's face transition, carrying quiet resignation beneath his composed. Isekai'd said his view of household formed by bonds formed despite no parents. Knowledge went as he recognized Shuri's guarded kindness towards him. Awkwardness remained, but Isekai'd gently changed the instant instead of retreating. Interest supplanted distance when he asked about a path formed by parents. Gradually, Shuri shared treasured recollections, and Isekai'd listened with silent respect. Listening carefully, Isekai'd felt a fresh purpose form as Shuri spoke about wanting to go back house. Emotion quickly returned, catching Isekai'd guard as Shuri tried to hold again tears. Guilt arrived hard when Isekai'd understood how painful the subject had been. Ease went as Shuri expressed gratitude for meeting the mercenary troop regardless of his fate. Knowledge became clear in when Isekai'd saw Shuri choose to remain, tentative but determined to stay. A light-hearted consideration broke the heaviness, as Shuri suggested a plain late-night dish. Amazement crossed Isekai'd's features when the invitation was rendered, shared silently, and despite no strain, a known meal was took hold between them, carrying recollections and pleasure more than its supplies. Isekai'd tasted gradually, noticing how the flavors grew with each mouthful. In that instant, comfort supplanted uncertainty, and the dish gently reaffirmed their rising bond. The meal reflected devotion and training, and Isekai'd recognized the effort back its pleasure. Learning its meaning stirred loneliness, showing how meals carried recollections of foreign household. Purpose erupted as Isekai'd decided to reply that honesty despite no reluctance. He expressed belonging, framing the troop as a household built by shared hardship. Approval went, And Shuri remained included, supported by faith and a location to stay. That night became a quiet turning point, as Teague understood he had gained a friend more than mere comradeship. Morning caused ease when Shuri went back safely, welcomed by voices and relieved smiles around the encampment. Worry remained, but comfort landed as Shuri appeared healthy and calm on his feet. The recovery was credited to care, recover, and habits built around years. Before long, Shuri resumed nourishing companions, reinforcing how deeply his job supported everyone's energy. With renewed purpose, Teague ready to head out. Knowledge the energy Shuri had built by calm habits. Training resumed in the forest where arrows came targets during the watchful gazes of the unit. Correction when Teague demonstrated proper form, shifting technique by example instead than force. A clean shot split the mark, causing awe and reaffirming his job as captain. Assurance surged as Teague announced harsher training ahead, ready to grow stronger alongside all people. The unit realized a shift in Teague, whose energy felt sharper and another purposeful than ahead of. When questioned, he paused, then recognized a transition rooted in personal purpose. Protecting a person important stated his straying path a plain direction at last. Remaining ahead of vast lands, Teague envisioned traveling the continent to see what lay more than common. His dream broadened towards the raging sea, driven by a promise to reach Shuri's foreign homeland. Teague imagined a future formed by effort, travel, and promises he intended to keep. As the unified kingdom formed, a public project appeared to chart the entire continent. Previously disordered understanding was assembled, aiming to create a complete map for all. Stepping ahead, Teague agreed to the task, carrying both skill and reputation. Abandoning training back, he selected exploration. Start a journey that would define his legacy. Teague crossed mountains and valleys, recording each corner of the continent by long seasons of travel. From those journeys, 2 written works appeared, combining maps with precise alien observations. The books landed widely, becoming valued references that formed regional knowledge. After finishing his serve, Teague vanished, despite no warning, abandoning merely doubts back. Decades later, his quick go-back amazed the palace, where records noted his disappearance but never said it. Teague ventured more than the continent, crossing the outer ring sea when navigation was yet unreliable. What he recorded afterward ignited interest, inspiring companions to imagine lands more than the known realm. After countless journeys, he went back his titles and selected a quiet path with his household. Reflection often brought him again to plain lessons discovered by meals and background. In the end, a shared dish of soup symbolized the interest that carried him more than all borders.